Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Boss fired me for being pregnant. I'm the one who gets paid in the end. The last year during lockdown had been a tough year for my family. My husband went from 6 figures supporting our family on his salary alone while we pocketed my entire salary to losing his job for 8 months. I work in political campaigning, which means I work on short-term contracts as an independent contractor. In other words, if we lose an election, I move on to the next race. I made a pretty good name for myself working on the lower levels of a campaign and moving up quickly. In my state this year, there were statewide elections, and I caught a lucky break and ended up the campaign manager on a statewide race. I am the youngest campaign manager, 24 female, to run a statewide race in about the last 20 years. When the primary came up, we lost the election by 200 votes. While we lost the campaign, coming so close to winning and my age made me kind of a superstar in my field. After we lost, I had offers from all over the state for jobs. The problem is, I had just bought a house and wasn't looking to relocate, like you often have to do in politics. Or the positions weren't high enough, coming off being the top dog, as the higher positions were already filled. I got an offer to join a local campaign, so no relocation, but the salary was lower than what I was used to. I would, however, be the campaign manager again. However, I learned quickly my boss had a holier-than-thou personality. She made a lot of comments about how real women choose to feed their babies and have natural births. I would later be able to do neither, and it really messed with my emotional well-being. I don't have time to list all the red flags, but I was literally just waiting until my husband got a job to exit. The campaign hadn't been built out at all. There was no one other than the candidate. I ended up building out our entire team, consultant, fundraiser, staff, etc. Luckily, I've made a lot of powerful connections in my time. I signed my contract and sent it in with the salary we had agreed on, with the stipulation that if we raised enough money, 3 months down the line, my salary would be raised, but could not be lowered at any point. Just a few weeks prior, I had also found out that I was pregnant, and my due date was the week of the election, and just a week after joining the campaign, I was also in a serious car accident. Luckily, my pregnancy was safe, but I herniated a disc in the car accident, and due to my pregnancy, there were very few things that could be done as far as helping my back or pain management. If I did my job right, that shouldn't be an issue because my job can essentially be handled from home and staff could do the rest. I had the team working in lockstep, and I was proud of the work I was doing, even though only about 10% of my views aligned with the campaign. Then we hit a snag. The candidate's husband got deployed to a rather dangerous place for a month, and she completely checked out. She stopped fundraising, which means that everything comes to a halt campaigning. She stopped putting in the legwork to win. We also lost our only lower staff member during this time. We knew she was worried about her husband, so no one on the team tried to push back very hard. Eventually, her husband came back and it was go time. There wasn't a minute to waste, and I was back to getting our operation working full speed. One day, she calls me up to tell me how 20 years ago her first job as a private school teacher was making as much money as I was now. I also live in an expensive DC suburb, not the backwoods where she grew up. I have multiple college degrees, and this job offers no benefits, unlike teaching. Not comparable at all. This is when I realized there might be a problem. A couple of weeks later, I told her I would need to take a step back from doing the other staff members' jobs, mostly door knocking, because of my injured back, but that we would hire someone. Unfortunately, due to the lack of fundraising, it made it hard to pay anyone else, and those duties fell on her. Campaign managers do not typically door knock. We had a team meeting with the entire team, and I started pressuring the candidate about all the things she wasn't doing, and there was a legitimate meltdown. She started yelling at me about how I wasn't doing my job, and my pregnancy wasn't her problem, and how I was the reason everything was failing, and then hung up on the entire team. This is where the malicious compliance comes in. After this, I decided to take a step back from doing all the duties that are typically handled by lower-level staff and just focused on doing my job duties, which weren't being appreciated. I pretty much went radio silent, and she kept nitpicking at everything. Everyone on the campaign started to grow uneasy, but I told them to just hold out. Well, sure enough, she calls me up and says, "Since you are pregnant and can no longer door knock, you can either work for state minimum wage or you can find a new job." Mind you, she knew my husband had been out of work for 8 months and thought I had no options at this point. But what she didn't know is that my husband had gotten a job offer that exact day. So I stopped her right there and thanked her for the opportunity and told her I would be working my contractually obligated 30-day notice at my current salary and then leaving the campaign. She then began to scream at me about how she wasn't paying me a dime more and started listing off a list of issues she had with the way I was doing my job. I stopped her, thanked her once again, and told her all of my finishing tasks would be completed when I received payment for the last month I worked. Yes, she was a month behind on paying me, as well as payment for the 30-day notice that she was legally required to pay me whether I continued working or not. I waited a few hours and she never finalized my termination in writing, so I sent her a termination letter thanking her for the opportunity and once again repeating everything we had discussed on the phone. She sent me a nasty email again, reiterating that I wouldn't be paid for the previous month or 30 days and listed about 10 things that I had done to be terminated, including that I didn't wear makeup to work every day. I decided to send this email to the rest of the team, and sure enough, everyone quit except for the consultant. In 5 minutes, she lost everyone she had. Then a friend of mine offered me my dream job working for him, so all in all, it worked out in my favor within 5 minutes of being fired. Well, here's where things get tricky. I realized that my contract that obligates her to pay me for the 30 days notice isn't signed, and I'm done for. Well, sure enough, in her fit of rage, she starts emailing everyone, talking badly about me. The only problem is, I still have access to her campaign email, and I'm seeing every email she is sending. Emails saying that she wants to keep me on staff, but that I need to take less money, and that I shouldn't have been dishonest about my pregnancy. So clearly I wasn't doing my job that badly. She just wanted to pay a pregnant woman less. She also asks the consultant for a list of things that I did wrong on the campaign so that she will have cause not to pay me for my contract. I noticed that the consultant never replies to this email. He tells her that if she wants to fight it, to send him a copy of the contract and he will have a lawyer take a look at it. Well, sure enough, she sends him a signed copy of the contract, and once again, my contract is valid, and now she has to pay me my severance. She has given me every piece of ammunition I need to get paid at this point, as well as wage a discrimination suit for referencing my pregnancy as a reason for termination. I hire a lawyer. She continues to pester me about turning over all my work. The thing is, since I'm an independent contractor, I only owe her a final product if I get paid. I reiterate that she isn't getting anything until I've been paid, and she can take it up with my lawyer. She begins slandering me to everyone I know and continuing to send emails about me that I'm just collecting. She then starts calling every friend she has to bully me into giving her what she wants. My response to all of them is, talk to my lawyer. In one final ditch effort, she has the consultant call me, begging me to turn over this stuff. The problem is that the consultant and I are personal friends, and he's really unhappy working for her, but has contractual obligations. I tell him to tell her the same thing, talk to my lawyer. 5 minutes later, I get a call back from him saying that she has fired him because he refuses to throw me under the bus and make up excuses for my termination when he believes I was wrongfully terminated. She fires him too, and now he's out of his obligations. He also tells me that the lawyer she sent the contract over to said to pay me. In a matter of 2 weeks, she is once again at square one with no one on her side. She's out of money and struggling. She finally emails me at 11 p.m. that she is willing to pay me. It's nighttime and I don't work for her anymore, so I decide I don't need to respond at that moment. Well, she starts calling me incessantly and texting me, all of which I'm ignoring. By the time I wake up in the morning, I have 20 texts and 5 missed calls. I tell her that I will need to talk to my lawyer at this point and I'll get back to her after he responds. Well, she goes nuclear. 20 minutes later, I get a call from the police. She's claiming I've been embezzling campaign funds and stealing her data. I have to get my lawyer on the phone and explain the whole situation and why this is a BS claim. I offer the bank account information for the funds she claimed I stole and prove that they were sitting right there in her account. She just doesn't know how to access them because I'm usually the one who does that. The police officer thinks she is nuts at this point, because she is, but then informs her that it's considered larceny to withhold my pay and asks me if I would like to press charges. I say, if she refused to pay, then yes. Within 2 days, I received a check in the mail with my payment and I turn everything over. The funny thing is that my 30-day notice pay was actually more money than if I had finished out the contract with the reduced pay she wanted to give me. I got an extra $700 and didn't have to work for her for the remainder of the time. She ended up losing her election in a swing district by 15 points. The saddest part of this story is how the candidate is clearly not qualified to hold an elected job as a window washer and still only lost by 15 points. In other words, she lost 42% versus 58%, meaning even with all that toxic behavior, 42% of the electorate wanted her to represent them. Why am I not surprised to hear this lady was running for office? Cancel my bonus? Make me do 2 jobs? Enjoy the backwater you earned. So back in the 90s, I was working for a European-based financial firm. US offices were managed by Europeans with a regional head office in New York. Younger employees were generally underpaid and overworked, as in your first few years out of college, the promised reward was being promoted to a director position where your salary, perks, and bonus structure would really kick in. Kind of like how law firms promote their younger lawyers to partners after a long wait. As junior associates, the only good news was that we received the same 5 weeks of vacation per year, plus a few weeks of sick leave as our European counterparts, which for me meant a lot of camping and staycations during the summer since I didn't really make enough to travel to exotic or expensive locations. The offices were set up in a way where the business development, BD, directors each had a junior associate. The BD guys would generally network, schmooze, and travel around their territories to meet clients and new prospects. Once back in the office, the BD guys would dump their meeting notes on the desks of the junior associates to follow up and land the business, aka a Hunter-Skinner model. As a junior associate, I was pretty busy assisting a BD, so I routinely rolled over at least 2 weeks of vacation every year. I had worked at the firm for 3 years and was starting to get antsy for a promotion. Right after Thanksgiving, my boss in the West Coast office told me that I was being transferred and promoted to the Southeast office come the new year. I really had no interest in working in/living in the Southeast, but I wanted to advance my career. I rolled over my usual 2 weeks of vacation into the next year, so I was eligible for 7 weeks of vacation that year. After celebrating my New Year's with my family in California, I packed up my car and drove across the country. Once in the new office, I settled in and met my new boss, who promptly informed me that he wasn't actually promoting me to director, though I was being given the responsibilities of the role as he judged me to be too young, but was also told that if I demonstrated that I could do the job, I would be promoted next year. I was upset, but didn't have a choice other than moving back home and starting from scratch, so I agreed to it. I disliked my new boss instantly, as coworkers told me he was flaunting his management perks, which consisted of large allowances for housing and automobiles, which were paid for by sales production from employees like myself. Turned out he was related to a serving member of the board of directors back in Europe, which is how he got the job as a regional manager. Everyone knew he didn't have the skills to do our job, so he just collected fat checks, went to expensive restaurants with friends, and billed it to the company as client development, all the while leasing a new Mercedes every 2 years on the company's dime, while generally being a jerk to everyone who worked for him. During the first week, I also met my junior associate, Jeremy. We sat down and discussed some accounts that I had inherited that were in backwater locations none of the other directors wanted to visit. Jeremy was professional, but I got the distinct impression Jeremy hated me, though I didn't know why. I started traveling around to meet my clients and prospects over the next few weeks, usually spending at least 3 or 4 days on the road. Back in the office on Friday to go over follow-ups on business leads with Jeremy and execute whatever paperwork needed to be taken care of. About a month later, I returned from one of my trips and learned that Jeremy had quit. It turned out that he was mad that he had been passed over for the position that I had been given. I couldn't fault him, as I probably would have done the same thing. I asked my manager to hire someone else to back me up, but he was hesitant to do so, reasoning that my client portfolio was just starting out, so I could do both roles until it made sense to staff up. I pointed out that it would be hard to be an effective business development officer if I had no support system to help grow my client portfolio, but he chose not to listen, knowing that I had little recourse but to shut up. I spent the rest of the year working my butt off. This was right before email and internet were common, so executing business on the road was hard. Fax machines were the bane of my existence. Even though laptops were reserved for directors, my boss was kind enough, heavy sarcasm, to let me use a company laptop on which I would handle all of the paperwork to process client business from hotel business centers late at night or early in the morning, so I learned to live on 5 hours of sleep or to sleep on planes whenever I could. After dealing with problems from some irate clients, I eventually paid for my own personal cell phone. Not everyone had them in the mid-90s, and our directors had just started getting company-paid phones that year. As I had to handle customers from the road, I just gave my personal cell number for clients to call so I could handle problems from the road. I landed a few big clients by a combination of luck and hard work, and got some solid referrals, which led to more referrals, so within a few months, I was gaining some serious momentum. Since I didn't have an associate to help me, that meant I spent the weekends and late nights back at the office handling paperwork, then back on the road during the week. I was so busy working both sides of the job that by December of that year, I hadn't taken my mandatory 2 weeks of vacation. I had some new clients that needed to be handled by year end, so I was granted a vacation waiver, meaning that my 7 weeks of vacation would roll over into the next year, adding up to 12 weeks of vacation plus sick time for the coming year. It was a big hassle for HR to process the waiver, but since I had produced a lot of new business, my manager was all too happy to order it done. I wasn't upset about working through year end, but I flew back and forth to California for Christmas on a 24-hour turnaround. I rationalized it, hoping that I would get paid the first big bonus of my career in a few months. At that time, European firms paid their bonuses in mid-April, while employees of the US-based firms got their bonuses by end of January. If you were planning on switching jobs early in the new year, working at a European firm meant that sometimes you left money on the table, aka golden handcuffs, so the timing of switching firms was important. I continued to work at my frenetic pace through April, taking no vacation as I was bringing in more and more clients and digging myself out of paperwork when I wasn't on the road. In the new year, we had some meetings about scorecards and sales goals, and I led my office in a few of the categories and was #1 for overall production. Finally, in mid-April, my boss called me in and announced it was time to discuss my bonus and annual review. I eagerly sat down, very excited, because I was assuming my bonus would be equal to my base salary at least, if not double. He handed me a piece of paper, and it showed a number that was almost 90% less than I was expecting for my bonus. I literally laughed out loud and told him it was a little late for an April Fool's joke, but he wasn't smiling. He proceeded to tell me how proud he was of me, but that since I wasn't a director, the bonus that I received was the maximum amount he would give me, as there wasn't any more money in the budget. I sat there in shock for a while, then kept asking the same question in different ways. Basically, why did he do me over on my bonus? It was like talking to a brick wall. Despite pointing to the scorecard that he showed me as the best producer in the office, all the while having no junior associate, he wasn't having it. I was crushed, but then asked him if he was promoting me to director, since I had demonstrated that I could produce, hoping that title would be a gateway into the big payday the following year. He shook his head and replied, "Maybe next year if you prove this year wasn't a fluke." It was a gut punch. He also rationalized that while my review was positive, I had some flaws that I needed to work on, mainly that I didn't work very well in a team atmosphere. I reminded him that I was a team of one, so there wasn't anybody on my team to complain about me. A switch finally flipped in my brain as I realized I had just gotten majorly done over, and there was no changing the outcome. I told him that I was feeling ill and would be taking some sick days, so I got up and left his office. Coworkers said I looked as white as a ghost as I walked out of his office, so they knew something was wrong. I forwarded my incoming calls to his extension, packed up my important papers in case I decided to never come back, then headed to my apartment in a complete rage. I called my family and told them that I needed to come home for some much-deserved vacation, so after drinking myself senseless for 48 hours and forwarding all my calls to voicemail, I called into work the following Monday and told my boss I would be taking a vacation week. He was pretty angry about the short notice, as he had been dealing with my irate clients contacting him about their problems since I couldn't be reached, and he didn't have much of a clue as to how to handle the paperwork necessary to do the job, so other associates were now being called in to help handle my workload. I flew home and made a few calls to people I'd worked with, hoping for some job leads. I managed to grab a lunch with an old associate who had left the firm, and he gave me some ideas and contacts, so I spent the rest of my vacation looking for a new job. I knew the timing sucked, so out of options, I went back to my job the following week. First day back, I looked at my HR data and realized that I still had 11 weeks of vacation to use that year, plus a few more weeks of sick leave. Around that time, there was a company-wide conference call to celebrate a big company milestone. I think the firm was 125 years old, but didn't care anymore. To celebrate the big anniversary, we were told we would be getting an extra week of vacation that year, meaning once again, I had 3 months of vacation in my account. As a high performer, I was also selected to spend a few weeks in New York during the summer and fall for some management training, so that meant additional time out of the office. The next month was a blur of looking at different vacation options for me to take that year. I had accrued a lot of hotel and rental car points and frequent flyer miles during the past year of traveling around, so I spent my days in the office doing as little client work as I could while spending the rest of my time on the phone with the frequent flyer and hotel points customer service reps, trying to squeeze as much vacation out of my miles and points as I could. By the end of May, I submitted my vacation requests, which detailed how I was going to take 3 months of vacation in the 7 remaining months of the year. I submitted the forms to HR, and within a day, my boss called me in to discuss my schedule as he realized I was basically going to be gone for almost 2 weeks out of every month for the rest of the year. I was wrapping my vacations around federal and bank holidays whenever I could manage it. He told me that he was rejecting my vacation schedule since there wasn't anybody to cover my clients in my absence. I asked him to call in the HR rep into his office to have his stance officially on record. He objected, but I said I wouldn't discuss such matters without an HR rep present. HR was called in, and my boss told HR he was rejecting my vacation schedule, but HR responded that I was legally entitled to take the vacation days, so he couldn't reject the request. I also told him that, henceforth, I wouldn't be handling any of my customers from my personal cell phone if I was out of the office, so I would be forwarding my work phone to his when I was on vacation or doing business development trips. Also told him I was going to Europe on 2 different trips and would be unable to be contacted since I don't have a company-issued cell phone. He was upset, but knew that unless he promoted me to director and issued me a cell phone, he couldn't do anything about my new stance. After that, I only did business development in areas where I like to travel, and more importantly, vacation. Until that point, I had always said yes to any meetings in backwater locations if it represented a chance to land a new client. Having learned my lesson the hard way, I didn't want any new clients to begin with, and certainly none living in areas I didn't like to visit. Trips to Florida became common. If I was traveling, I would typically spend Monday to Wednesday making very infrequent sales calls. Most of my schedule was falsified with fake prospects, so I could spend afternoons playing golf or hanging out at hotel pools, trolling for ladies my age. Then would take off Thursday and Friday with vacation and sick days so I could hang out and have fun, using hotel points to extend my stays for free. Since I was still underpaid, I ate cheaply and learned to squeeze as much out of my trips for the least amount of money I could manage while still having fun. My boss was now irate with all of the customer calls coming to him, but he refused to hire an assistant for me, so I kept forwarding my line to his when I was out of the office. Whenever I was back in the office, pretty infrequently at this point, he would routinely lambaste me with verbal warnings about poor performance reviews, but I would just shrug my shoulders and tell him that maybe he was right not to promote me to director since I was such a disappointment. He was also upset because he had been commended for having such a high-producing office the year before, mostly courtesy of my efforts, and now he was getting a lot of heat from New York that his new client numbers were down. Since I had frequent flyer miles and hotel points, but not a lot of money, I backpacked through Europe on 2 different 2-week trips that summer and also took a number of vacations back home, diligently following up on job leads on the West Coast that I cultivated whenever I was in the office. By October, I started to firm up some conversations with a prospective employer back in California and finally received a concrete job offer in mid-November. I waited until December 15th to inform my boss that I was quitting the firm and told him I would be using my 2 remaining weeks of vacation/sick leave so that my resignation was effective immediately. He was surprised that I didn't wait until April to leave, but I laughed, telling him I knew he was going to do me over on my bonus anyway, so the money wasn't worth waiting around for. He then asked me to stay through the end of January in order to give him enough time to hire and train an assistant or a replacement to handle my clients. I refused, noting that Jeremy had quit 20 months before, so he had plenty of time to prepare for this eventuality. As I was packing up my office and informing coworkers about my departure, I got a knock on my office door from the HR rep as he wanted to conduct an exit interview. He closed the door and I aired out all of my dirty laundry. I told HR the firm had lost me when my boss had done me out of my bonus, repeating the story that there wasn't any money in the budget. The HR counterpart shook his head and laughed at my boss's stupidity, noting that since Jeremy had been an employee at the beginning of the year I'd arrived, his salary and bonus was actually in the budget for the whole year. As such, my boss could have allocated that amount that he would have paid Jeremy to my bonus, which probably would have kept me reasonably happy. Instead, he decided to do me over. I moved back to California that week and started the new job the first week of January. 3 months into my new job, I got a call from a coworker at my previous firm. He called to tell me that after I left, HR from the head office in New York came down early in the new year to interview my former coworkers. Apparently, my sudden departure had raised some eyebrows in New York as they viewed me as a rising star, and questions were asked as to why I left so abruptly. Apparently, other employees in my office had also been done over in various ways. Lots of client development meal expenses were rejected for being too expensive by the guy who was routinely billing his meals with his friends to the firm. So after listening to all of the complaints, New York management decided to make a change years before he was due to be rotated back to Europe. Since he was related to a guy on the board, they couldn't fire him, so they reassigned my old boss to some backwater farm town. I couldn't pronounce the town, but was told it was some kind of place that doesn't provide perks like allowances for housing, accounts for expensive steak restaurants, or a new Mercedes. I started my own company 5 years back, and it's worked out pretty well. Even though I was done over 25 years ago, I always think about that experience fondly, as I probably would have worked for a company like that for my entire life had I not been shown how companies and bosses will generally do you over if given half a chance. It was eye-opening and put me on a path to eventually start my own firm, so for that I'm forever grateful. I always think about that situation around New Year's to remind myself of how far I've come and how not to treat my employees. Hopefully some of you can benefit from my experience without all of the drama that I went through. Happy New Year! I gave my Karen mother-in-law a fake copy of my house key and she went berserk about it. I want to preface this by saying that I, female 34, married my husband, male 37, a year ago. His mom is snoopy and very annoying. She can't help it, that's just how she is, as my dear in-laws say. My husband and I purchased a new house recently. My mother-in-law kept pushing to get an emergency key. She promised that she would only use it in an emergency, but given the fact that she had an emergency key to our old apartment and walked in on us twice, but my husband didn't think it was a big deal. I just couldn't trust her, so I just sent her a fake key after she kept pushing, and she had a smug look on her face after I hand-delivered it to her. Days went by, and on Christmas dinner, mother-in-law angrily called me out on the fact I gave her a fake copy of my house key. She shamed me for doing this in front of everyone, but in my defensive, I asked her how she found out, and she said a few days ago when she came over at 4 while my husband and I were out. I reminded her, "Didn't you promise you would only use it if there was an emergency? So you tried to get in when there was no emergency, and you broke the promise you made to us." She looked red in the face, and the other family started staring, and some even laughed at her for the face she made. She suddenly got up from her seat and rushed into the kitchen where she had a huge meltdown, so loud that the next door neighbors must have heard. Literally, I've never heard a 60-plus-year-old woman throw a tantrum like that. Needless to say, dinner went awkward, and my husband and his sister were giving me looks. My husband went off on me in the car and said I lied and manipulated and humiliated and exposed his mom, and said he wouldn't have let me get away with it if he had known. We had an argument, and he's demanding I apologize to his mom for my childish behavior and for ruining Christmas dinner for the whole family. Am I the jerk? ETA. So this went off unexpectedly, and I thought I'd show my husband some pretty helpful comments I found here a few minutes ago, but he got mad at me when he saw it and said I was nuts to talk about his family online. He demanded my phone so he could delete it, but I refused and I went upstairs and into the bedroom. I never have seen him so agitated, and I didn't think he'd react like that honestly. But thank you guys for your support. It really means so much. I'll update if I can. Thanks again. Not the jerk. I'd rethink my marriage if my husband put his mother over me. Yeah, this needs to be dealt with before they have kids, because it will only get more and more out of hand, and you don't want her having meltdowns in front of your kids. Can you imagine mother-in-law taking the kids without permission? Having a tantrum in front of everyone, including the kids, when she's called out? Yuck. Not the jerk. But your husband seems to have no problem with you being humiliated and shamed in front of everyone. He seems to have no regards to your need of privacy and dignity. Am I the jerk for kicking out boyfriend because of his dog? I know the title is going to get people riled up, but hear me out on this. I, 31 female, have been dating dude, 29 month, for 8 months. It has been great. He has a dog that is 8 that he has had since she was a puppy. I have nothing against dogs, I'm just not a fan of owning them simply because 1, I live in an apartment and I feel they need a yard, and 2, I don't want to do all the cleanup that's involved with them. He takes his dog most places with him, which is fine. She's very well behaved and has never caused any problems. In my place, I have an elderly cat as well as a guinea pig and gerbils, 3 fish tanks, and a partridge in a pear tree. I usually go over to his place to hang out for the sake of his dog. The other day, he offered to come over to my place to hang out and help me install a new wall mount. I said it was fine. Without asking if it was okay first or even bringing it up to me, he had brought his dog with him. My apartment doesn't allow dogs, even as guests, so I had a bit of anxiety about it. His dog was doing fine when suddenly she started barking like crazy, which seemed out of character for her. Dude then said, "Oh, I forgot. You should put your animals away in a locked room." I asked why, and he laughed and said with a smile, "My dog ate my ex's rabbits. She got into the cage and everything. They aren't safe until they're locked in a room." I was upset. He knew I had small animals. This wasn't a surprise thrown at him, and he knew about this issue, and he brought his dog over without permission or warning. I told him he needed to leave now and take the dog with him. He isn't invited over anymore. He got upset at me and called me a dog hater, said that is just how dogs are, and I should be more accepting of her. I didn't respond, just continued to push him out of the door. Am I the jerk here? ETA. My friends are chipping in, telling me that this is just my anti-dog mentality coming out, and that I should be more open to doggos. It's really frustrating. I don't understand how some people can be so love-blind to a dog. ETA 2. Wow, this blew up. I'm on break at work right now, but to quickly answer a question many have raised about what if when the time came up for us to move in together, moving in with a partner is not an end-game goal for me with relationships. In all of my relationships, even serious and long-term, I have preferred to live separately, so the pets having to live together would never be an issue. I kicked out Karen on Christmas Eve. My eldest daughter has had a very snotty attitude towards me ever since she had her first kid, just over 10 years ago. She was convinced from the start she knows exactly what she's doing and needs no help. I learned quickly to keep unsolicited commentary to myself, except to me, it's a different story when they're under my roof. I don't think the rules should have to change to accommodate her and the grandkids. For example, this is the same house my kids grew up in. I've had the same rule since before they were all born. No shoes on the carpet. And yet, my daughter tells her kids right in front of me as I'm encouraging them to take their shoes off to ignore me and go ahead inside. I put my arm out to stop one of the grandkids and said, "No, that's not how we're doing this." My daughter dramatically huffed and puffed, but finally went along with it. Until the next day. We have a good amount of snow on the ground here, so of course the kids went out to enjoy that. So imagine my shock when I hear the front door and find my eldest grandkid, 10 years old, on the couch with his snowy, muddy, dripping boots and muddy prints all across the carpet. I was so angry. Is he not old enough to know better? I told him to go back out right now and take them off, and then he can help me clean the prints. He actually apologized and was agreeable, but then his mom came in while we were cleaning and got mad. Her kid had no business scrubbing floors and handling cleaning products. It was spot remover, and he had gloves. I told her she had made it acceptable for him to disrespect my rules, and this was the result. She mumbled something under her breath and left. The last straw came last night. We were all watching a movie together when the 8-year-old went to the bathroom, and about 30 minutes later, I realized he hadn't returned. I went to go check on him and found that he had ruined half of our Christmas Eve dinner that I had prepared in advance. He said he had accidentally dropped the stuffing, which he had poorly cleaned up. Half was on the floor and half was in the trash can. And then his snack consisted of most of the mac and cheese and yams. We just had dinner 3 hours ago. I was so upset I was almost in tears. I just sent him to the guest room he's staying in and told my daughter to look at what he did. What did she take away from it? That I sent him to his room. She, as always, reminded me that I'm not his parent and have no right to tell him what to do. I said someone needed to because he had just single-handedly ruined our holiday dinner, and it was ridiculous. She snapped and told me I'm an old hag trying to stay relevant. I refused to tolerate any more disrespect and told her to leave, so she and the kids packed up, 8 o'clock at night, and they left. Now here we are, Christmas Eve morning in an empty house. My husband is angry with me for causing them to leave and says it's just a few days. I should have let it go. Is he right? I do wish the kids were still here. Not the jerk. Such disrespect for basic house rules. I would never dream of putting my mother in the same situation as you were exposed to. Instead of bend to your rules, she preferred to leave. So it's on her and her awful attitude. Honestly, you deserve better. I suspect husband just doesn't understand the amount of strain that kind of behavior causes. From your first paragraph, OP, I was ready to say you're the jerk. But this is not about you interfering with your daughter's parenting. The rules you're talking about are actually just basic common sense and respect for others. There has to be more to this story though. Your daughter is a huge jerk and sounds like she's damaging her kids. Only you might have some insight on why she's like this. Not the jerk in this specific instance. Consider visiting them in their home. I wonder if your daughter lets them sit on her couch with muddy, wet boots. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know. Something tells me daughter is a single mom. Gee, I wonder why. Am I the jerk for overruling my wife on a matter concerning our daughter? I, 42 male, and my wife, 38 female, have a daughter who's 14. She's friends with the son, who is 13, of an acquaintance of mine. Because my daughter and her friend are different genders, my wife insists on always supervising their playdates. Our daughter can't go to his house, he has to come here. She always watches the kids when they're together and doesn't let them close the door when they're in her room. To be honest, I always thought my wife was being fairly reasonable until this incident. Kids are kids, and they're nearing the complicated age, so I always backed my wife up even when my daughter begged to be allowed to go to her friend's house. Recently, my wife was watching the kids while I was at work and realized she needed some things from the store. She made the kids go with her so they wouldn't be alone. Apparently, I'm obviously getting all of this info secondhand, the kids wandered off while she was shopping. While they were alone, an employee approached my daughter's friend and accused him of stealing something. My daughter's friend turned out his jacket pockets and there was nothing in there but his phone and keys. The employee demanded that he remove his jacket because she thought something was hidden under the jacket. My daughter's friend refused and said he didn't steal anything. My daughter called for my wife and she showed up pretty quickly. My wife sided with the employee and asked my daughter's friend to remove the jacket. When he did, the employee saw the necklace he was wearing and demanded he take it off so she could inspect it to see if it was merchandise from the store. I've seen him wearing this necklace before, for the record. At this point, he ran out of the store into the cold, not wearing a jacket, and called his grandfather to come pick him up. I was at work when my acquaintance called me, furious. He said his son was half frozen when his dad got to him, which I believe because it's very cold here right now, and that my wife had profiled him. He told me that his son won't be going over to my house ever again. Edit. My daughter wants me to add this. She, unlike me, knows how to use Reddit properly and edit posts. Her friend is mixed. A lot of people asked and I didn't know, so hopefully they see this. Edit 2. My wife texted me that there was an emergency and I needed to call her, so I stepped out of the theater and did so. Guess what? No emergency. No surprise either. She told me I had no right to separate her from her daughter on Christmas. I said it was her choice and confronted her about what my daughter said at breakfast, especially about the food thing. She started crying and said I had no idea what that boy put her through. I hung up. Forget this. It's Christmas. I'm watching Home Alone with my daughter. Edit 3. My daughter said this comment needs to be in the post itself. Yeah, the paying attention to the movie didn't last. She's become really intrigued by all these comments and has been on my phone for the last 20 minutes. I'm pasting it in. She showed me how. So my daughter and I are at the movies right now. After breakfast, she said she didn't want to go home, so we're going to the Christmas movie marathon at the local theater. She went to get snacks. I gave her $30 so she could come back with a small tub of popcorn. Darn these concession prices. So I'm going to tell you guys some of what happened at breakfast. It was a lot, so apologies if some stuff seems rushed over. Ask for clarification if you'd like. My wife is blowing up my phone right now, but I don't want to talk to her. This wasn't the first time something like this happened, just the first time it happened in public. Here's some of the things my daughter told me my wife did that they kept quiet about for fear of not being allowed to hang out anymore. I know, I'm a jerk. I understand that. My wife screamed at this kid for giving my daughter a gymnastics lesson. He's on a gymnastics team. They weren't doing anything dangerous. She made them stop and called him names. She screamed at them for playing with makeup. It belonged to my daughter and was a gift from my sister. I don't think it was expensive stuff. Even if it was, who cares? She made him wash his face and go home. He told his grandfather he had a stomachache that day apparently. She told him he eats too much food at our house. This is the worst one for me. I was mad when she told me that. So yeah, learned some stuff about my wife. It's clear to me now that I haven't been an active member of my marriage in a long time. This was hard to learn. The hardest part was knowing that my daughter didn't trust me with any of this because she assumed I would side with her mom. Edit 4. I asked my daughter to stop reading the stuff on this post. Obviously, now that she's seen it, she can go on Reddit on her own phone and find it again. But trust has to start somewhere, right? We gave up on the Christmas marathon. We're both too upset to sit still and watch a movie. I took her to my sister's and then went home to talk to my wife. I needed to get some things straightened out with her before I took my daughter home. It didn't go well. My wife apologized when I got home. She was crying. She said the holidays were so stressful and that she had a bit of a breakdown. She begged me to get our daughter and bring her home. I said I would once we talked. She kept sobbing, so I went and got her some water. I said we could talk or I could leave, but I wasn't going to get our daughter until we talked. Eventually, she stopped crying and talked to me. I told her I want to go to family therapy, and she agreed. I'm sitting in the living room now, calming down before I go back to my sister's to get my daughter. That was extremely emotionally draining. What a way to spend Christmas morning. Not the jerk, but you still have some work to do. Firstly, you're absolutely right that your daughter should be allowed to visit her friend. If his grandfather is there, that sorts out the adult supervision line your wife is worried about. So all told, you're making a reasonable adjustment based on her wishes. Her failure to compromise isn't your fault. However, I think you already know that your wife is not setting a healthy example for your daughter at all. You said your daughter defended her friend. Good, that sort of prejudice needs to be called out. However, the enforced supervision, the "you know what teens are like," is another matter. As others have said, this will only lead to resentment and mistakes. Far better that you ensure your daughter understands being safe and, more importantly, feels empowered to set her own boundaries and make her own decisions. Constant supervision on its own is authoritarian and doesn't work. You say you want to talk to your daughter about all this. Good. Make sure she knows that you trust her and she can come to you for advice, but that you're there to support her making the right decisions, not trying to make them for her. I'm not saying let her do whatever she wants. She's still only 13. But make sure she knows you respect her independence to make some choices of her own and that you'll still love and support her. I'm not saying you don't do any of these things at all, but make sure she knows, because from the sounds of it, currently your wife seems to be the leader on these issues and she is not setting a good example. OP, not the jerk. It's about trust. Why in the heck was he profiled? The employee had zero right and should have ran the tapes. Your wife had zero evidence to do so, so he was singled out for a reason. The sad part, you knew this family for a very long time. Your wife knew what she was doing. The fact the young man was falsely accused stinks. Like people said on this thread, the kids with the strictest parents party hard in college and do what they want to do. At 14, it is rough, but you also have to trust. You do not want them to close up and shut down. My mother was so strict, I could not go to concerts, date, movies, sleepovers, basically anything. My parents got in long, drawn-out fights. It was so bad, I left for my aunt's house to live with her until I turned 18. I can tell you this, as strict as my mother was, I did stuff behind her back, just never brought it home. So for all of the weirdness, I stayed out of the home playing sports, but sometimes I never went to practice. I went to the movies and dated boys, never told my parents anything. I went to Planned Parenthood on my own for BC. So OP, you need to have your wife lighten up and have a trusting talk with your daughter and have normalcy. Honestly, not having a door closed with a male present is just common sense. However, not allowing her over to her friend's house, male or female, is just plain weird. As a mom of 4 kids, I was not super strict. I allowed group dating until age 16, and then they were on single dates. Kids have to grow up. I had open communication with my kids, so if they truly needed help, it was non-judgmental, we can talk. That is how it should be. You say your kids are 13? Okay. So this happened about 10 years ago when I worked at the box office of a movie theater, before automated machines were the norm. Adult tickets, 14 plus, were $11.99. Kids tickets, 3 to 13, were $9.50, and kids under 3 were free. I had a woman come to my till with 2 kids. Now, these kids looked to be about 15, though it can be hard to tell sometimes. As many kids don't carry around any kind of ID, the rule of thumb was to sell either a kid's ticket or adult ticket based on how old the adult told us the kids were. Many people would say that the kids were 13 in order to save a few bucks. Typically, I didn't care, as I understood the prices were pretty high and this was a big chain, so a few older kids getting cheaper tickets wasn't a big deal. What was different this time is that the woman was very rude throughout the whole transaction. We have a series of questions we have to ask throughout the transaction, loyalty program, etc. And we would randomly get scored by mystery shoppers to ensure we were following the script. This woman was annoyed and short with me throughout the whole transaction when I was being super friendly and just trying to do my job. When we got to the part about what kind of tickets she needed, it went something like this. Me: how old are the kids? Her: why? Me: so I know whether they need kids tickets or adult tickets. Her, what's the difference? Me, adult tickets are for 14 plus, they're $11.99. Kids tickets are for 3 to 13, and they're $9.50. Her, oh, they're 13. Me, okay, and which film would you like to go see today? Her, whatever film it was, I can't even remember anymore. Me, okay, no problem. For 2 kids and 1 adult, that will be $30.99 total. Her, actually, I'm not going with them. I'm just dropping them off. Me, unfortunately, this movie is 14A, which means you either have to be 14 or accompanied by an adult to see it. Her, well, they're 14. Me, you just told me they're 13. They're actually 14. I just didn't want to pay the price for adult tickets. Me, unfortunately, you told me they're 13. Unless you have ID that shows that they are 14, I have to assume what you first told me was correct and cannot allow them to watch this movie unsupervised, as it is 14A. Her, this is ridiculous. So what are my options? Me, they can either go to a different movie that's not 14A, or you will have to buy a ticket and accompany them to this one. After a lot of back and forth about options, she finally decided to bite the bullet and buy an adult ticket to accompany them. I like to think she spent the next 2 hours reflecting on how her attempt to save $5 ended up costing her $11.99 and 2 hours of her time. Realistically, she likely bought the ticket, accompanied them into the theater, and then left them there to watch the movie while she went shopping. Either way, it still cost her the extra $11.99 for the ticket. I had a lady do that with me when I was 20 and worked at a movie theater back in 1999. South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut had just come out, and our theater head office sent out a notice that we were to fully enforce the no one under 17 without an adult, because it was R-rated. Lady came in with 2 boys who couldn't have been older than 9 or 10. She asked for 2 tickets for that movie. I asked which 2 of them the tickets were for, and she said, them. I'm going shopping while they watch the movie. I informed her of the policy and then pointed to a printed out copy of it posted next to each ticket booth. She was not happy and said she wanted to speak to a manager. I said, okay, but he will tell you the exact same thing, and pointed her to the manager window. She stomped over, had an animated conversation with him, and then stomped back and paid for 3 tickets while muttering to herself and walked to that theater with the boys. The manager came over and said, I'm going to make sure she stays. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, he caught her trying to sneak out and kicked them all out. I was kind of on the other side of this type of thing years ago and really annoyed the theater people. We went to a midnight opening of some movie that had been hyped up. It was probably garbage, but my wife and I like to do the midnight movies occasionally. There are these 2 younger guys looking heartbroken as the attendant pulls them out of line and tells them without an adult they can't go in. As they pass me, I look up and say loudly, Danny and Jack, are you all going to see the movie too? They were clearly confused as their names were probably not Danny and Jack, but said they were getting kicked out because they didn't have adult supervision. I told the attendant that they were my nephews and I would supervise them. The attendant, who knew I was lying, was not happy but let them in anyway. Like 40 different people in line gave me the nod. Am I the jerk for expecting my brother to uninvite my soon-to-be ex-husband and my friends from his wedding? I'm 34, female. My brother, who's 31, is getting married in a month. My brother is not friends with my friends, but he knows them by association and gets along with them, and he's invited them to his wedding. My soon-to-be ex is also invited. He was invited anyway before I found out certain stuff. My husband and I have known each other since high school, and we share the same friend group. His friends are my friends and vice versa. Recently, I found out my husband has been cheating on me for 4 months with another woman, and all of our friends have been covering for him. They all knew and enabled him. I immediately filed for divorce. I came clean to my family about it a few days after I found out. They were all shocked and angry. My dad was more focused on my husband cheating, but my mom was more focused on our friends covering for him. My brother was also upset because he was close to my husband. My husband has left home and he's living with his sister for now. Yesterday, the topic of my brother's wedding came up and he was talking about the seating arrangements for me and my parents. He asked me if I would be comfortable to be seated next to my husband and our friends. I looked at him in disbelief and told him he shouldn't even be asking that question. I'm also upset that he's inviting them after all, especially my friends since they're not his friends at all and he just knows them by association. He said it would be mean if he uninvited all of them just 1 month before the wedding and said that he understands why I'd feel uncomfortable but he doesn't want to be mean. I reminded him how my husband cheated on me and I got lied on by all my friends who were enabling him. He says that he's aware, but I should not insist on him uninviting them because it's his wedding and he makes the rules. I dropped it and didn't continue the conversation, but am I the jerk for expecting my cheating husband and the friends who covered for him to get uninvited for my brother's wedding? I want to highlight that the whole cheating issue is fresh. It's barely been a month since I found out. Not the jerk. I would make this my hill to die on. Brother, it's fine if you want to invite them, but I will no longer be attending. I value my mental health and do not want to spend time with them. I hope you have a lovely wedding. If your brother is choosing people he isn't even friends with over you, then it proves what a terrible brother he is. Also, the fact he was going to sit you next to your soon-to-be ex-husband shows how little he actually values you. Not the jerk. OP, take this advice if you take any from this post. I wouldn't even give my brother the choice. Tell him and your family that you would much rather be at home alone than to be surrounded by people who betrayed you, and make sure you tell your brother he's on that list as well. If you have the opportunity, get a hotel and treat yourself to a vacation. Turn your phone on Do Not Disturb and enjoy that day yourself rather than being miserable just because your brother doesn't want to be mean. His refusal to take back the invitation to them shows that he approves of their actions. I'd also go low contact with my brother if he put me in such an uncomfortable situation like this, but I'm spiteful and can hold a grudge for years. Someone who doesn't have enough of a spine to support his sister in a difficult time because he doesn't want to be mean does not deserve to be in your life right now. It is his day, but that does not mean he gets to make you miserable because of it. OP, I'm so sorry you're going through this. You deserve a much more considerate brother. Am I the jerk for getting a man fired for telling my kid to shut up? I'm the 1/3 owner of a company with two friends from college, Mike and Eric. I run the technology side of things, so I'm not the face of the company, so I rarely go into the office. I have a 4-year-old daughter whose father is Mike. We've never been in a relationship and chose to co-parent our daughter. Mike got into a car wreck and required surgery. Eric was out of town. My nanny is on holiday break, so it's me taking care of my daughter and trying to run a company. There's a project that Mike's working on in the office, and I have to grab it and a portable server. My daughter is already upset because she knows her dad is hurt. Getting her loaded into the car to go into the office was messy. She refused to wear matching boots and is in an elf outfit. At this point, I'm like, whatever, let's go. The whole time in the car, she's crying and upset. I get her to calm down because I told her we would grab some things from work. I meet our VP of operations, Adam, and everything is fine until my daughter realizes she left her dinosaur in the car. She will not be appeased. We are in Adam's office trying to get everything together to take to my home office. My kiddo will not stop crying because Sarah, the dinosaur, is in the car alone, and Sarah might not be able to breathe in there. Adam and I are like, it's okay, Sarah is fine. I'm mortified and want to get my kid back in the car and home. Adam has to run to the IT department to grab a few more things for me. My daughter is in total toddler meltdown over Sarah the dinosaur. A man walks by and tells me to shut my kid up. This is an office, not a daycare. I've had it. I told him this wouldn't be his job if it weren't for this kid's father or me, and he could be the one to shut up or find a new job. Adam comes back and the man starts yelling at Adam about how he's trying to work and my kid and I won't shut up. He told Adam he needed to get me out of the office. I'm like, this is my office, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Adam agrees and says I'm the owner and there's nothing he can do. The man walks back to his desk. Adam tells me he will handle it, wishes me good luck with the project, and sends my daughter out. Adam fired the man for insubordination because the situation did not get better after I left, and Adam made some mean remarks about women in business. I get it wasn't one of my best days, but I'm trying to run a company and take care of my daughter in a stressful time for her. The man was rude, and to be honest, no matter who I was, he shouldn't be telling a kid to shut up. Am I the jerk for refusing to make Christmas morning breakfast for my family? Background. I, 24 male, was the only one interested in baking, so I got all of my grandmother's recipes when she passed away. For the past 11 years, I've been making her Christmas bread for breakfast Christmas morning. When I got to my parents' house this morning, I had 2 pies with me, which I made for dessert. I asked that they not be touched as I hadn't had time to do a taste test, and I wanted to make sure they were good. I then went to the store to get the ingredients for the mentioned Christmas bread and some tofu takeout for myself. I'm a vegetarian and my family doesn't serve any main dishes without meat. When I got back, both pies were gone. to the point where my mother had already washed the dishes for me, so I didn't have to bring back dirty dishes. I was, I think understandably, pretty upset. I didn't even get to taste either one, much less have a slice, and they ate both before dinner as well. It evolved into an argument pretty quickly because they've done things like this before. I almost didn't get a slice of my own birthday cake because I was cleaning up from baking it, and I just wanted at least an acknowledgement that they should have waited for me to start eating my pies. They refused and said they were perfectly in their rights to do so, as the pies were my payment for staying with them and eating their food. I told them that if the pies were my payment, then I obviously didn't need to make the Christmas bread, and they could do it themselves. They acted like I had told them Christmas was canceled. I tried to backtrack a bit and told them that my mom could make it because she did until I started helping my grandmother, and that the ingredients were already bought. I've been called entitled, spoiled, and accused of actually ruining our family Christmas. I get that they were expecting me to make it, but it's not like they're out of options for food tomorrow. I've been hiding in my car for the past half an hour, trying to figure out if I was in the wrong and should just make it or not. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I ended up getting all of my stuff and heading to a nearby friend's. My house is a couple hours away. We made the Christmas bread together and drank a bit, so it's not my best Christmas bread. Edit 2. I've had a couple questions about how long I was in this store and if anyone else brought anything. I was gone maybe an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. They're pretty far from a good grocery store, and the first place I went to didn't have any good cherries. Everyone usually brings an appetizer/side or dessert, so there were also other desserts there. And I've been messaging a cousin who got there around when I got back, and it appears that there were 12 people plus my parents there when I got back. I guess I was a bit distracted. Thanks for all the holiday wishes. Not the jerk. Not only did they eat 2 entire pies while you were out and didn't even save you a slice, never mind you asked them not to touch them, they had all the gall to claim it was your payment to stay in your own parents' house and eat their food, when you have to get your own food because they won't include vegetarian food in their dinner. You also have to buy all the ingredients for the bread they are demanding you make for them. These are selfish, self-centered, entitled people. They're disrespectful and rude to you as a guest or as family. They demand labor from you and won't give you the smallest courtesy or consideration. Go home, make yourself the bread with the ingredients you bought, send them the pictures of you enjoying it yourself. Sometimes we have to make our families. You have to have my item. It's Christmas. I had gone out to see my psychologist on Monday and had a great session. On my way back home, I decided to wander the business district for a bit. I find it fun, and we have virtually zero risks of getting sick here, so I can be safe while doing it. I was wandering through the store, which we will call Bullseye, that employs people with red shirts, and was coming up from near the register when I heard the sound of a feminine voice starting to rise. Me, being the nosy person I am, I hung around to listen to the drama. We've got Karen, we've got poor worker, we've got manager, and we've got security guard. Karen: but you have to have it in stock. The website says that you do. Worker: the website isn't always accurate. It's better to call the store. But I needed the item. Where else can I get it? Worker: you could probably get it at another store. I don't want to go to another store. The manager hears this and walks over. Manager: hi, can I help you? Karen turns to the manager. I need this item, but she, gestures to employee, says that you don't have it in stock. Manager: unfortunately, it's a very popular item, and we sold out quite quickly. Well, where else can I get one? Manager: you might be able to find one at another store. I won't go to another store. I want it at this store. We could order it online for you. How long would that take? Right now, about 2 weeks. That's not going to work. I need this item for my kids for Christmas. Manager: please keep your voice to reasonable levels. Forget you. I'll yell if I want to. You're being stupid. The security guard was already en route, but hurried over when he heard this. Security: I'm rescinding your right to shop here. Please leave the store. No, I want my item. Security: leave now. Karen goes quiet for a moment and then spins on her heel and storms away quickly. Karen, looking back: I'm going to call corporate. I know a high-up manager there. I swear to God, I'll bang! Karen didn't see that the door was slow opening and promptly walked into it. Multiple people started to laugh at this point, including the security guard. Worker was hiding her face, Manager was going through a titanic struggle to keep composure. Karen made this decision then to turn around and start swearing at the people who were laughing.
Shut up! Shut up! All of you! I'm going to sue this store. You're all going to be jobless by Christmas Day.
She turns to walk out the door, not realizing that by this point, she was behind the sensor range and she walked into the closed door. She lets out a scream of rage and starts pounding on the door. No one could hold back this time. Seeing someone storm into a closed door twice in a row was beyond hilarious. Everyone who was watching was howling with laughter. Karen,
Open! Open, you jerk! Open!
the security guard walks forward and waves to the sensor, making the door open. Karen lets out another scream and storms out. Entitled mother with 3 teenage kids cuts line of 25+ waiting customers, causes a scene, and leaves the kids stranded. Oh boy, this happened a few minutes ago. I'm currently in the car with my own mother on my way home from witnessing a very surreal scene. It's the night before Christmas Eve. We went to Sam's Club. Lots of people, some not wearing masks like the jerks they are. Shopping was fine despite the hustle and bustle. If you're unfamiliar with Sam's Club, whether you do the scan or go self-checkout on your phone or use the registers, you must show proof of purchase before leaving. Of course, there was a long line, but no biggie. The woman verifying receipts was quick and efficient. My mom and I finally reached the front of the line. Some people had a ton of stuff, and getting them through took longer, but we only spent a few minutes in line before getting to the front. Got to the front, second in line, and we suddenly saw a herd of people with a cart full of stuff. It was an older woman and 3 teenagers/young adults, one of whom had a service dog. The nice woman verifying receipts asked if they had been scanned yet. All heck broke loose. Employee, has someone scanned your receipt? Karen,
No, I have somewhere to be. Can you scan us?
employee, you have to wait in line, ma'am. There were about 25 to 30 people in line waiting to be scanned. It was long, but going fast. But that wasn't enough for Karen, who became irate and started yelling.
Just scan us. I have to leave now.
Employee, you have to wait in line back there. At this point, her kids were becoming embarrassed, and the son, who looked like the oldest, tried talking her down by saying, Mom, Mom. But she wasn't having it. She continued to become increasingly irate while the kids watched on in horror as she got into the employee's face and then tried to leave without scanning her receipt, but her kids wouldn't give her the cart. Karen to the employee.
Get me your manager.
Employee gets the walkie. I need security up here. Karen.
I am leaving.
She tells her kids.
Come on, I gotta go.
Tells the employee.
Stop yelling at me.
Employee. Ma'am, I'm not yelling. You have to wait in line. Her kids shuffled onto the back of the line, while Mommy Dearest reiterated that she was leaving, and she meant it, waving her car keys around, and she actually left just as security came in. Her kids politely waited in line, and when my mom and I left, we saw the kids hanging around the awning by the exit. It's storming out, service dog and all, alone. She stranded her kids because how dare they play by the rules and wait for their turn when Mommy has somewhere to be and decided to go shopping right before. I feel bad for her kids. I've witnessed a couple of Karens, but this is the first time I've seen one demand the manager. If only those kids were younger, someone would have called the police on her. Those poor kids are probably still out there with a cart of groceries and a dog. Karen steals my car on Christmas. I'm 16, female, and my dad's family comes from old money. His parents never approved of his relationship with my mother and never did even when she got pregnant. He didn't see me for the first 10 years of my life until my grandparents passed away. Before that, when I was 7, my mother started to date Melissa, my stepmom, who has a daughter named Grace who's 2 years older than me. She used to be mean to me because she had a dad and I didn't. Things got worse when I found out that I did have a dad, he just wasn't around. Her dad had to intervene to make her stop bullying me. 3 years after that, my dad contacted my mom, explained what happened, and we reconnected. Grace's changed too, because at the same time, her dad started to distance from them until he ended up moving 2 states away to be closer to his new wife's family when I turned 13. I remember that during the first few years, if my dad bought me something, he'd buy something for Grace too. Not as big or meaningful, but he never left her out. She usually threw fits at Christmas because he would buy me tech. Phones, iPads, laptops, headphones, and only get her clothes. Pretty and good clothes, to be honest. This Christmas was the worst though. Since Grace has to move for uni next year, her mom wanted to bring her grandparents, uncles, cousins, and dad to celebrate. So she asked me to spend New Year's with my dad this year, and I agreed to. My dad got here a few days ago to drop off our gifts, which included a brand new car because now that Grace is moving, she can't drive me around anymore. I was honestly so happy and excited. When Grace and her mom arrived and saw the car, they thought it was for her, from her dad or grandparents, because she's the one leaving for college. But my mom kindly explained to them that my dad had dropped it off for me. They weren't happy about this, but the day went on. They were excited about the small party for Grace. This morning, my mom and Grace were with Grandpa dropping some stuff off, so it was only my stepmom and I. Around 10 a.m., Grace's dad called and said that he wouldn't be able to make it and that he wished her luck before hanging up. It was really messed up. My stepmom was so mad, and when I asked what I could do, she said that she'll show me and started taking all of my presents from underneath the Christmas tree. I was so confused, and when she took my keys, I asked what she thought she was doing. She said,
Grace doesn't need to feel like second best during this Christmas.
I said that she couldn't take my things my dad gave me, and she only answered with a,
I'm your mom. I can do whatever I want,
and hopped in my car and left. I called my mom to tell her what happened, and after that, I called my dad. He told my moms that if Melissa didn't give back my things, he'll report them as stolen, including my car, and while my mom is torn between us, Melissa and Grace said that I ruined Christmas because my stepmom might go to jail and that not everything is about me.
Bruh.
Yeah, that's a sad story, isn't it?
Stepmom sounds like a monster. I hope she did go to jail. Maybe she'll run into Bubba while she's in there. Instant karma.
Am I the jerk for refusing to give my stepdaughter her Christmas present from her grandparents if my son doesn't receive one as well? I, 31 female, have been married to Dan, 39 male, for 7 years and have Nick together, who's 4 male. Dan has a daughter, Mel, who's 11, whose mother passed during childbirth. We met when Mel was 1. Mel's grandparents, Tim and Kim, maternal, used to not be a part of our lives. They never supported my relationship with Dan. They told Mel I was trying to replace her, I didn't love her, and other comments. Dan decided to go no contact as he didn't like how they treated us in front of Mel and how Mel began replicating that behavior. Last Christmas, we all reconciled due to the world events occurring. During this time, Tim and Kim only brought presents for Mel and Dan. Me and my parents were also present, and we both bought presents for them, but it wasn't reciprocated. Nick noticed that his sister and dad got a present, but he didn't. I didn't like the behavior and knew as he got older it'll become more apparent, and I don't want him experiencing that. Me and Dan sat down with them to explain how we felt, but they just acted surprised. I suggested we lay down boundaries and how we'd like to approach any gift-giving holidays to be better prepared in the future. We agreed that for birthdays and Christmas, we'd give gifts to everyone, and it was the thought that counted. Throughout this year, Tim and Kim only bought gifts for Dan and Mel's birthday. My birthday was in March, and Nick was born in April, but we didn't receive anything, not even a card. Sent a text asking if everything was all right, but they said they were busy and wished us a happy birthday. For Kim's birthday, my parents let them stay in their second home so they could go on vacation. They took my parents up on that offer, yet when my parents' birthdays came up, they didn't receive a gift or a text. At this stage, we were all pretty frustrated, and my parents felt like they were being taken advantage of as Tim and Kim were only nice to them until after their holiday. Last week, Tim and Kim came to drop off presents for the kids. They dropped off 2 boxes, both labeled Mel. I texted, assuming they had accidentally written Mel's name twice and asked which was which, but they told me both were for Mel. I asked where Nick's present was, but they said they weren't giving him one. No explanation. I was fuming, so told Dan the situation before responding. We told them that we would not be giving Mel the presents from them unless Nick got one, as it wasn't fair and we had already agreed to gift everyone gifts. They claimed that wasn't fair and we were showing favoritism, and how could we withhold a gift from an innocent kid? I then said that I'd rewrap it and claim it was from Santa. They posted on Facebook about how I was favoring my kid and punishing their grandkid for no reason. This was met with criticism directed towards me. You're the jerk for this instance. Nick isn't related to them at all. These are Mel's maternal grandparents. Her mother passed during childbirth, and you are trying to cut her off from the rest of her mother's family because you want them to pay the toll of buying presents for you, your son, and your parents? That's unreasonable when their only family in your household is Mel. The comments about replacement, etc. were not acceptable, but you did not mention those as having continued or being the issue right now. Your issue is them not buying your entire family presents. As long as they're now cordial with you, that's really all you can ask for. It's so weird how hard you guys keep trying to force these folks to care about a kid they're not related to. Your son has grandparents and parents and doesn't need Tim and Kim. Mel has her dad and them. I don't know what kind of mom you are and would never assume you aren't a great one to her, but at the end of the day, her dad and them are her only biological family. Why would they want to buy a kid that isn't their family presents? Let them have their thing with Mel, and if it's with Mel only and you don't like that, don't contact them more than you have to. I don't mean to be rude, and I apologize if this upsets you, just my take. This set of grandparents have one grandchild living in your home. That grandchild is not your son. Though it would be nice to toss him a little something, they are under no obligation to. Do not cut Mel's maternal grandparents out of her life. They are a thread to her mom and any other extended family members. Mel deserves to know them as much as she wishes. Cut them off, and when Mel gets older, you will become the wicked stepmother who kept her from family and tried to erase all memories of her mother. It may not be what you actually do, but it is the way it will play out. Not everything in life is equal. Not everyone is related. Your son is old enough to have this gently explained. He's also old enough to be taught it is rude to demand gifts just because someone else is getting them. Have your husband explain this because you have not learned it either. You're the jerk. Mel's grandparents owe your son and you nothing but being civil towards you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the grandparents? Please let us know.
I'm surprised the people on Reddit were actually sticking up for the grandparents. Usually the people on Reddit are, you know.
Boyfriend makes me choose between him or my cat. First things first, I, 24 female, have been dating Kyle, 25 male, for 2 months now. He has started to spend the night. Kyle never grew up with pets, so my cat has been an adjustment to him, his words. My cat, Crumb, 4 male, is the most important aspect in my life right now. Like most cat parents, he rules the household. We are very close since I found him abandoned on the side of the road as a 3-month-old kitten and nursed him back to health. Crumb is very docile, but hasn't shown any affection or really interest in Kyle. I don't force it. Crumb does as he does. Lately, Kyle has been complaining about Crumb. I guess he walked into my bathroom to see Crumb rubbing his face against my toothbrush. I have one of the electric ones that stands. He was shocked and told me how disgusting it was. I laughed and said, "Yeah, that's not great." He demanded I get a new toothbrush, expensive, and I said no. I just put the toothbrush in a drawer. Next, Kyle says he doesn't like my nightly routine with Crumb. I give Crumb a kiss on the head, stomach, and then face before he goes to sleep. He sleeps on my bedside table in a cat bed. If I don't do this routine, he lays on me until I do. I know that's annoying, but that's how it has always been, and I love doing it. Well, Kyle says I am unhygienic because of this. He says Crumb is dirty. He's inside only, and I brush him every day. And even letting him sleep in the bedroom is gross and gets fur everywhere. It doesn't, but Kyle isn't even allergic, so I told him that I put the toothbrush away, but he told me that I took it as a joke and didn't punish Crumb. I tried to explain that you can't punish cats, nor would I want to in this scenario, but he wouldn't hear it. He then went on to say that me kissing Crumb is disgusting, especially his face, and he would never kiss me if I kissed Crumb again. He asked me to put Crumb outside the room when he's over, or lock him in a crate. So I said, okay, bye. Not only is Crumb 10,000 times more important to me, but I laughed in Kyle's face about never kissing my cat again or keeping him locked up. This is where I may be the jerk. Kyle told me that I was ruining our future and how mean I am for laughing at his concerns. I felt guilty, so I asked a group of my friends and they were split. The pet owners laughed. The non-pet owners said I'm in the wrong for not making Kyle feel more comfortable. They said that Kyle wasn't asking me to get rid of Crumb, just compromising with him. They said I was being kinda gross and understand his concerns. Not the jerk. Everyone is different, and you are going to get various opinions. After my divorce and I started online dating, and I kept an eye out for profiles where the women had a pet photo. I skipped writing to anyone like that. I am allergic to most animals if they are kept indoors, and if a woman has a photo of themselves with their pet on their profile, I knew that the pet would be an issue for me. I personally agree with him and the toothbrush, but this is your cat, and you have to find someone who you are compatible with. Just because you date someone doesn't mean you are compatible. That's the point of dating. You can see now that you two are just not compatible. Not the end of the world. It doesn't make either of you wrong either. Just not a match. OP. Thank you for this perspective. I guess I had just been nervous about dating since my last breakup. For some reason, I have this idea in my head that I have to make it work. Kyle is great in literally every other way, so it is sad. Kyle knew I had Crumb before we went on our first date. I also made it super clear how important Crumb is to me. He said he was cool with cats. Everyone sucks here. He sucks because he's got some pretty extreme expectations and is pressuring you. If he genuinely feels this way, he should make sure to date only people without pets. But you're also not looking great here. If you want to build a full, deep relationship with someone, you'll have to recognize that 1. It requires some sacrifices over time and trying to meet the other person's needs, even if you don't completely agree. And 2. That even some pet owners would say your situation is extreme and off-putting. And laughing in his face when he's trying to talk to you about something serious to him is just crappy. Reply. What is extreme and off-putting about her situation? Extreme. The cat is the most important aspect of her life, and there's little willingness to change. This isn't a good starting point for building a relationship with a human. She doesn't sound like she has the emotional bandwidth to connect because the cat is the hyper-focus. Yes, her significant other's expectations are ridiculous, but it doesn't sound as if there is really any room for change, no matter how reasonable someone might be. Off-putting. The cat is allowed on all surfaces, including bathroom and toothbrush contact. I assume that means kitchen too, which is just disgusting. Sleeps right next to her head or on her, is given his way if he makes noise or doesn't like a change in routine. If I were starting to date someone and these things were true, we'd be done. I've had several cats. I think they're amazing, but there are methods to help them stay off of your food prep and personal hygiene surfaces. I'm going to go against the grain here and say you're the jerk. I don't care that he's an indoor cat, and good for you by the way, that's really good. He still uses his tongue as toilet paper. What you're doing is quite gross, and pets need boundaries and discipline. I've owned 4 cats in the past, and I currently have 2 dogs. I get it. I love my animals, and I'm sure you do too. But your animals shouldn't be in charge of the house. You're the jerk. I've learned over the years that if a girl has a cat, she's cool to have fun with, if you know what I mean, but not to be with long term. Same thing if she has indoor dogs. If I walk in there and it smells like wet dog, I'm ghosting you ASAP.
Yowza, what did Fluffy ever do to you?
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Kyle? Please let us know.
There's 2 types of people in this world. Those who love cats, and those who forget to thumbs up our videos for YouTube's algorithm. I'm talking to you.
Am I the jerk for calling out my mom about her gift-giving methods when I was a kid? We had our usual immediate family gathering for the gift opening, and the kids enjoyed. My mom was recounting how she would always give me what I wanted, but she only stopped after I was grown, and she changed religions. I did a double take and said, "You showed me what you'd gotten me, but I never actually got it." She argued she gave me what I wanted and had pictures to prove it. Now, my mom had a habit of buying me what I wanted for Christmas, allowing me to take the wrapping off, take pictures of me with the gift, but then taking the actual present from me and putting it away, saying,
"I got you this, but you're on punishment, so you can't have it now."
Then I would never see it again. I'd ask for it months later, and she again would say I'm on punishment for whatever and couldn't even have it. She would keep these items and present them to me as an adult when she was cleaning out closets. It was a mean method and still upsets me when she gives me the items. I told her this and she denied it. My family was appalled. My mom then tried to backtrack and say she took them because I always broke them. I say, how can I break it if I never even got it? And you're giving me the pristine items as an adult. She didn't have an answer, so I let it go and we carried on. Later, she approached me and said I embarrassed her in front of the family and it was unfair. I apologized, but I didn't think it was fair to act like she had always given me what I wanted when she didn't. She's still quite upset with me. Am I the jerk for calling her out? Edit. I see a few asking why I'm still in contact with her. Honestly, because I'm soft, and she's my mom. There was a couple of years I did go no contact, and it was hard, but I used that time to find my footing emotionally. During that time, I met my hubby and his family and friends. That experience opened my eyes to how a healthy family functions. It was magical, for lack of a better term. They all accepted me with love and open arms. Once I had a real foundation to build on, we started our family. I'm low contact with my mom now, but I didn't want to deny her grandkids. We've discussed a lot of the things done over my childhood, and I've gotten similar responses from her. It hurt and sucked, but I feel I got what I needed off my chest, and instead of holding a grudge for something I can't change, just move forward within my own set boundaries. We have hiccups, but all in all, I'm okay. Not great, but okay. Thank you everyone for your kind words and advice. I really appreciate it. Edit 2. For those concerned about my kids, I have set boundaries with her about my kids. If there's an inkling of any treatment she gave me, she's gone. She knows this and has not tested it. I also don't leave her alone with them. I don't play about my babies. Not the jerk. So your mom would buy you a gift, take pictures of you unwrapping it, then take it away for some BS reason, probably to return it and get her money back? Yeah, that's going to catch up with you one day. OP. She didn't get the money back. She has given me items as an adult that I'd wanted when I was like 7 after she cleaned out her closets. Like, oh, here's that easy bake oven you wanted. I kept it all these years for you. Then I'm like, Mom, I'm 28. What am I gonna do with an easy bake now? I accidentally got a guest fired once. I am no longer in the game, laid off just before lockdown, but stick around this sub to remind myself what I miss and don't miss about the industry. I thought I would dust off a few of my tales from back in the day. I was working as the front office manager of a mid-level 162-room property. Around 7 a.m. shift change, I get a text from my overnight security. Is GM in today, or who's manager on duty? Me. GM is out of town, so it's a combo of chief engineer and me. I'm planning on being in around 9-ish, but chief should be there shortly. What's up? Security. Had to punt on a maintenance issue at midnight. No biggie. Left both of you a note. Didn't want to do a full report if I didn't have to. Let me know if you have questions. When I get to the hotel, I discover that we were sold out the previous night, and when our last guest checked into room 413, none of the lights in the bathroom were working. Security and audit stole some lamps from my office to get the guests some light in the bathroom. About 11, Chief lets me know he's going up to look at the lighting situation in 413. A few minutes later, he calls down to me to ask for details on the guest in 413. I pull up the reservation and I have a name. 2 registered guests on a 2-night stay checking out tomorrow. Chief tells me when he knocked on the door and spoke to the guy in the room, he was certain he smelled green. I told Chief to wait for me to come up and join him at the room. When we get there, Dude Bro is just stepping out of the room, eyes clearly glazed over. Hey, you weren't smoking anything in there, were you? No, man. It was my roommate. I was asleep, man. Well, I don't care who it was. I'm kicking you out of my hotel. Cops will be here in a half hour. I suggest you be gone by then. 45 minutes later, Chief and I go back to 413. Room's empty, so we start looking to make sure housekeeping isn't going to find anything they shouldn't be there. Chief calls to me from the bathroom. Hey, notice anything unexpected? I poke my head in to see what he's talking about and find him flipping the lights on and off. Seeing my puzzled look, he says, "Lights work, and your lamps aren't in here." We have a good laugh on our way down to our offices, thinking we misread the note. Nope, both of us had a note saying the room with bathroom lamps was 413. I check with my front desk agent, and she says the auditor told her 413. I call my security guard. She says she can't remember which room it was, but knew it was across from the elevator. Sure enough, room 314 checked in right around midnight, and Chief found my missing lamps. A few hours later, my desk agent calls, saying there's a lady on the phone asking about some credit card charges. I take the call, and it's the boss of Dude Bro and his friend, asking why their card had charges for 2 nights plus almost $300 extra, and they had to call her to get their spending limit increased. I told her that it was because we kicked them out because we caught them smoking in the room, and charged them for the second night because the room was out of order, plus a $250 tax cleaning fee. Her response: I would like to apologize for the actions of my soon-to-be former employees. Reply: We had something similar happen. We had a long-term guest who worked for a construction company from a neighboring state here to oversee construction on a new Tesla showroom my town is getting. He was pretty much working remotely when he took the remotely part too far. His head office got a call from some subcontractors who said they hadn't seen the guy in weeks and needed him at the job site, so his office called us at the desk asking if we had seen him and to do a wellness check because they couldn't reach him on his phone. My supervisor asked me to double check the room number and I blurted out, "Oh, you mean the guy who only comes out of his room to buy 2 bottles of wine every night?" Not realizing my boss didn't put the call on hold. Well, the boss at his office heard my comment and immediately asked for a copy of his bill, including the incidental charges, and saw all the wine and beer charges. Next thing we saw was dude coming to the desk with all his luggage, saying he was leaving because he was let go. His company refused to pay his incidentals, and dude didn't have the $800 to cover what his company wouldn't, and he shut off his credit card, so we couldn't even try to charge it. So we ended up having to write it off as bad debt. Rigged a group assignment and getting the Polytech to pay me $500 as a result. It's late, and I just remembered the awesome malicious compliance on a group project for my business degree at Polytech about 9 years ago. Please forgive my memory, it was my second semester, and I've since gone on to complete postgrad. The paper was business computing. It was a compulsory paper for business students, think accounting, marketing, and management majors, and the information technology students, which was an entirely different degree, but both had this same core entry-level paper. I tried to get cross-credit for this paper based on my skills and programming qualification, but no joy. We were put into teams of 5. I found my notebook, and it says we had to deliver a presentation, website, social media profile on Twitter and Facebook, write a research report, and back that up with a spreadsheet containing charts. Yeah, basic crap. This assignment is worth 20% of our final grade, and another 5% was writing a reflection on what working as a group taught us. I'll circle back to that. Half of the assignment grade was not on our content or delivery, it was based on is having 30 or so marks to hand out to other team members based on their perceived performance. Maximum of 10 marks, or 10% of your final grade, could be given to another team member, I think. The marks in the rules are a bit hazy, but what we did isn't hazy at all. Sure enough, like any group project, 3 of us did all the work and 2 didn't even front, not even for their final deliverable of the presentation. Pity. If they had made our practice beforehand, they could have wised up to our plan. Myself and the 2 others worked out we could all award each other 10 points and the 2 project freeloaders whatever was left, but there was nothing to say we had to give them points, so we didn't. So sure enough, we all patted ourselves on the back, nailed the deliverables, and scored full marks on the assignment. The other 2 didn't even manage a passing grade and had to retake the paper the next semester. I didn't see those 2 students around after that. Remember that reflection? I wrote in mine about how the system could be rigged and people could get grades for doing nothing if they hadn't wised up to the system. That as a team, we voted strategically. Full marks. The absolute kicker, I finished the paper with a final grade of 99.5% and took out the top student award, along with a $500 top student prize. How about that, Mr. Dean of Business School, who said I didn't know enough about computers to get a cross credit? You now have to pay me $500. It was the second argument that year he had lost to me. Am I the jerk for getting a guy fired for confronting me in the lobby where my dad works? This happened last Thursday, by the way. My dad is one of the executives at a media tech company. Before lockdown, I, 16 male, was always there after school. It's a pretty big building, so some of the offices there are closed because people are working from home, so it's not so many people hanging in the lobby like before. My mom dropped me off there because my dad was in a meeting and we were gonna go eat lunch after. I'm there waiting in the lobby with my backpack and this guy from across keeps looking at me. He's there with some other people. The lobby is big, so there's always others that are there on lunch break. Then he comes to me trying to be friendly at first. Then he asks if I work in the building. It's obvious I don't work there, so don't know why he asked. Everyone else is in suits with their security pass sticking out. I told him I'm waiting for someone. He says only employees are allowed in the lobby because of lockdown. It's obviously BS. They haven't made any rules like that. But he wouldn't leave me alone. The security guy that was at the front even told him so when he tried to ask him to escort me out. He looked annoyed by then and telling me that lots of homeless people have been coming in, lying about that too, so I should just leave already. Security at the desk told him I'm allowed to be there. It was back and forth for like almost 10 minutes. I'm already upset, so I told him to just buzz off already. When I told him who my dad was, he laughed like he didn't believe me. My dad texted me then that he's outside, so all I said was, whatever. In the car, my dad saw I was mad, and after I told him what had happened, he was asking me do I remember the guy's name, if he said what department he was from and what he was wearing. I just told him what I remembered. He ended up finding out who he was and called up his supervisor. They let the guy go. My dad says the guy should have known better than to lie or cause a scene like that in their building. He told me to drop it. I just didn't think they were gonna get that extreme with it. My dad was really mad about it. I keep thinking about it now, if I shouldn't have said anything at all. He was being a jerk, yeah, and I was mad. Does it make me a jerk that I helped him get fired though? Not the jerk. You didn't get him fired. He got himself fired. He was abrasive, ignored the security guard's assurance that you were supposed to be there, lied about company policy, and essentially called you a liar by laughing when you finally dropped your dad's name. I'm assuming you tried to avoid that because it totally feels like saying, "Don't you know who I am?" It was not your call and it wasn't your fault. That he got canned instead of written up suggests that he may have already been on thin ice. Am I the jerk for not removing butter from the breakfasts I make for my whole family? I, 16 female, live with my parents and my 2 older brothers. A couple of months ago, I decided I needed to gain some weight. I am technically underweight, and honestly I didn't really like the way I looked or felt. I found a bunch of ways to add some more calories into my diet, and one of those was actually eating breakfast. In the past, I rarely ate breakfast, and I never ate a breakfast that was a whole meal. So I started cooking myself breakfast every day. Not only is it delicious and helps me gain weight, but I also enjoy relaxing in the morning by cooking something. I make a lot of different things, but to give you an idea, this past week I've made waffles, breakfast burritos, egg sandwiches, and oatmeal. When I first started cooking breakfast, my parents and brothers, who work from home at the moment, asked me if I could make some for them too. I said sure because I was already cooking so it didn't bother me. Since then, I've been making 5 portions of breakfast every morning and everyone has been enjoying it. And I've gained 5 pounds. About a week ago though, my parents and my oldest brother went on a sort of a health kick. They decided they wanted to eat healthier and cut down on how much fat and sugar they were eating. That's not really what I need personally, but whatever, I don't care what they eat. They decided to swap out sugar with stevia, buy these healthy yogurts with no sugar, and swap out butter with margarine. They also decided that they wouldn't cook with fats anymore, they would just use Pam. My other brother and I don't follow any of these things. Personally, I think I'm healthy enough, and the amount of sugar and butter I eat isn't going to hurt me. So I still put sugar and butter into breakfast and cook with butter or oil too. Yesterday we were all eating breakfast and my dad asked me what was in the waffles, so I told him flour, butter, sugar, etc. He seemed surprised and asked why I didn't just use the stevia and margarine. I told him because I don't really like them and I'm trying to gain weight, so using low-calorie alternatives doesn't seem like the best idea. Then my dad asked me if I could just switch to Pam when I cooked stuff to reduce the calories a little. I told him absolutely not. Since then, my mom and other brother have tried convincing me. I've told them no several times, and now they're angry that I won't compromise. I told them if they wanted to use their low-calorie stuff, they could cook themselves. They think I'm being inconsiderate of their health and that I'm just being rude. My dad even went so far as to threaten to stop buying sugar and butter if I wouldn't be more considerate of them. I think that if I do compromise, eventually they'll ask me to swap out more and more stuff until I'm barely eating more than before. Am I the jerk? Am I the jerk for kicking out my in-laws? Christmas Eve, my wife, Sarah, and I hosted my mother-in-law, Jane, and father-in-law, Robert. Sarah and I are in our 40s and the in-laws are near 70. Every time we have them over, I have to remind Robert not to feed our dog table scraps. We don't want to promote begging. We're trying to keep her weight healthy and the dog has some allergies which require expensive shots. Each time I have to remind Robert not to feed the dog from the table. He laughs and stops. Christmas Eve, I catch him again. I ask him like usual. He laughs. Some 20 minutes later, I see him sneak a piece of chicken off his plate. We do not feed the dog chicken at all because we think that is one of her allergy triggers. I tell him again. I explain about the allergies and he plays dumb with a smirk on his face. I am not happy. I leave to help Sarah in the kitchen clean up, and I look over and he does it again. Don't know what he gave her. At this point, I'm seeing red. How dare you come into my house and continually disrespect me? It's not like it's just me. Sarah has gone through this previously on other nights we hosted. I simply walked over to the table and said, "I guess that concludes Christmas Eve. Have a good night." Everyone's jaw hit the floor. We hadn't done presents yet or dessert, yada yada yada. I explained that I told him twice tonight. I felt disrespected multiple times. Sarah is upset with me because I made that decision without talking to her. I admit I was a jerk, but I've seen her mom and stepdad walk all over her before, and we had discussed this very dog feeding issue after previous dinners. She doesn't stand up to them, and it's always next time. I also have to admit, it isn't just the dog feeding issue. I had to hear this out-of-touch man talk an outdated view of the world. Poor people should just get better jobs, and a bunch of other stuff. I told Jane she can stay, but she wasn't going to take sides against her husband, and they drove off together. When I saw it was 3 against 1, I just retired for the night. Sarah didn't talk to me until Christmas morning. I had embarrassed her in front of her family. I should have kept the peace until another time. He's an old man and forgets. Also, her brother and sister-in-law allow their dogs to get scraps. I stopped her and told her I reminded him twice that night and about the smirk and how he waited for the 3rd time for my back to be turned. I also told her how awful it is to have dinner at her brother's house because their giant dogs have their head in your lap, slobbering on you. It's gross. She understood better, but still thought I should have consulted with her and waited until it wasn't a holiday. Since they had plans with us, they would have nowhere to go. It wasn't a big deal, and I went nuclear. Not the jerk. I do think you should have consulted with your wife first, but putting your beloved dog at risk and not respecting you or your house is not acceptable. Do not let internet opinions get to your head. Keep a cool mind and think things rationally, and try to see everyone's perspective, be they right or wrong. Good luck. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or father-in-law? Please let us know.
I don't care how old you are. You go in someone's home and disrespect them, you're gonna get what you deserve.
Boyfriend gets mad and destroys my Christmas ornament. So my boyfriend hates Christmas. He doesn't like giving or receiving gifts or any of the festive traditions. We've been together for 4 years and he knows I love Christmas, so he plays along. Well, last night we agreed we'd take the tree down next week, but when we came downstairs today, he started taking everything down. His reasoning being, Christmas is over and the tree takes up space. Now here's the thing. A lot of the ornaments we have are like family heirlooms. Most of them are older or the same age as me, 24, or were handmade by my deceased grandmother. My boyfriend started just tossing the ornaments on the table, which started stressing me out. I was telling him to stop, to calm down, or either move, and I'll put everything away. He was getting angry and started yelling at me because I'm trying to keep the tree up. Well, you probably guessed it. He threw an ornament and it broke. It was one of my grandmother's handmade ones. I took one look and just broke down, like ugly crying. He started getting more mad, telling me I'm being childish and stupid for getting upset about the tree. I feel like I'm the jerk because I started yelling at him to step away from the tree because he was going to break more ornaments. And when he wouldn't and kept calling me childish, I kept yelling at him and telling him that he's being a jerk. After he put everything away, he tried to talk to me, still telling me that I was being childish and stupid about the tree and ornaments. I get how it might be childish, but I don't have memories of my grandmother, but I have a picture, and growing up, whenever I was sad, I would hug and talk to her. I only have a small amount of jewelry or handmade ornaments or trinkets from her that are extremely special to me, so I don't know if I'm just being stupid and blew things up. Edit. The ornament is fixable. It was a handmade clay wreath, and luckily only part of the bow and the part you hang on the tree broke off, which I can fix. To all those showing concern, my boyfriend is never like this. He's always shown me, my belongings, and my family respect. He has no Christmas bad experiences from the past, and despite not liking Christmas, he has always put an effort into doing my Christmas traditions. That's partly why I was so confused on if I was the jerk, because this was so out of the normal for my relationship. He went upstairs for an hour, and when he came back, he apologized. He said he was getting stressed and frustrated about me yelling, and he wasn't being as careful as he should have because of it. He said it was really an accident and that he felt bad about breaking the ornament. I'm planning on having a discussion with him as the way he handled the situation wasn't right, and we'll see how things go. Edit 2. Oh boy, so this is getting a lot of attention, which is why I'm adding a second edit. I had a headache and took a nap for a few hours. When I came back downstairs, my boyfriend sat with me and gave me a real apology. He said he handled the situation completely wrong and that it was entirely his fault and that he never should have talked to me that way. He said he felt absolutely horrible about breaking the ornament and he should have treated them better and stopped as soon as he saw me crying. He hasn't been feeling well the past couple of days and has been exhausted after spending the week with our family. On top of which we found out we have to get tested to see if we might be sick. He thinks he's just irritable because of that, which he said he knows isn't an excuse. I know many of you reached out and are worried about my safety, and I really appreciate that. My boyfriend has never mocked or made fun of my interests or traditions. He's always happy to participate and do things with me. He's always cared for my happiness and well-being and has always been supportive. He's never made me feel unsafe and has always settled any arguments by talking and communicating. This outburst was so out of the ordinary, which is why I was so confused. I think you need to throw out the boyfriend rather than the tree. There is just no excuse for this behavior. Absolutely none. So don't let him gaslight you into thinking you are somehow to blame here. For the sake of your Christmas spirit, your long-term happiness, and the safety of your precious ornaments, get out now. I'm not saying this lightly, but a man who can be so callous with things you hold dear isn't someone you should want in your life. Not the jerk. If my partner broke an irreplaceable item after being told to stop, then told me I was being childish, they'd be dumped before they had the chance to finish their sentence. Exactly. Sometimes accidents happen and things may be damaged or get broken, but there's a big difference between I was really careful and treating things that are important to my partner with care, but something happened and it was damaged, and I find this annoying and I'm not going to be careful and you're acting like a child because I ruined something precious to you. Not the jerk. He broke an irreplaceable family heirloom because of his carelessness and somehow thinks you're the one in the wrong? Are you really sure you want to be in a relationship with someone who has such lack of regard or respect for your feelings? Seriously, get away from this guy. This is red flag behavior. There's no point in trying to explain to him why you're upset and defend yourself against being childish. If he doesn't already know, as a grown man in his 20s, that if someone else's property is important to them, you don't treat it carelessly, and that if you do and break it, you should feel awful, then he will never understand it. Being careless and breaking your stuff was only half the problem. I'm way more troubled by him trying to bully you into feeling childish as opposed to being apologetic. He will never understand. You'll leave him and he will forever tell people you're crazy and be convinced you left him over an ornament. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
I just want to know who peed in this guy's eggnog.
Your unnatural hair color violates our dress code. Fix it. Let me start off by saying that this did not happen to me, but rather to a cousin of mine who's 18 and a senior in high school. She told me the story and gave me permission to share it. So my cousin has a natural patch of white hair at the front of her otherwise dark head of hair. She's had this all her life and it's gotten bigger as she's gotten older. She used to get teased a lot for it at school until bleaching and dyeing the hair at the front of your head a different color than the rest of your hair became a trend, and now she blends right in with the other girls her age. The school she currently attends has a very strict dress code that includes no hair that is dyed unnatural colors and extreme hairstyles, and frowns heavily on dyed hair in general. When in-person classes resumed at her school, one of my cousin's teachers took one look at her hair and sent her to the principal's office, insisting my cousin's unnatural, extreme hair was in violation of the dress code and too distracting, despite the fact that she's never dyed or bleached any part of her hair in her life. My cousin insisted that this is the way her hair has always grown, but the principal was having none of it. She told my cousin,
"When you come back tomorrow, I expect you to have dyed your hair back to its natural color, and don't dye it again. As long as you are at our school, you are to adhere to the dress code."
My cousin smugly replied with, "Of course, I will comply with the dress code from now on." My cousin got some hair dye that was as close of a match to the hair on the rest of her head as possible. In order for it to blend in, she ended up dyeing all of her hair, not just the white streak. The next day when she walked in, the teacher complimented her on her natural hair and told her never to dye her hair again. Cue malicious compliance. As with anyone who dyes their hair, the roots eventually need to be touched up as the hair grows, but my cousin didn't bother with that. At first, nobody, at least none of the teachers or staff, batted an eyelid. It wasn't until her hair had grown maybe an inch or so that her teacher suddenly looked at her and barked,
"What did we tell you about your hair? No unnatural colors or extreme hairstyles. We told you to dye it back to its natural color and not to dye it again. Go to the principal's office."
My cousin did as she was told. The principal asked her why her hair looked the way it did. My cousin replied with, "Well, you told me to dye my hair back to its natural color and to never dye it again. So I did just that. I dyed my hair the color of the hair on most of my head to get rid of my white streak, which is how my hair naturally grows, and didn't dye it again. So now the roots are showing. I did exactly what you told me to do." The principal called her parents and told them to come pick their daughter up, explaining that due to her multiple violations of the school's dress code, she would be suspended. So they came to the school and brought the family photo album with them, which had pictures of my cousin at various stages of her life, all with the white patch in her hair. In addition, her father also has a white patch of hair on the side of his otherwise dark head of hair. It runs on his side of the family, so the principal reluctantly didn't end up suspending my cousin, but she did give her a warning that
Your extreme hair is still a distraction to the other students, and they are going to wonder why you're getting special treatment. Consider yourself lucky."
So my cousin wasn't suspended and didn't get any more harassment from the school staff. Gradually, her hair returned to its natural, extreme color. She still continues to occasionally get disapproving looks from the school staff, but none of her classmates feel like she's getting special treatment and think it's cool that her hair naturally grows that way. My cousin says that she will not be returning to that school next semester and will be homeschooled instead. Am I the jerk for ruining my husband's Christmas? I'm female, 29, and my husband, male 33, is the breadwinner, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. We used to both work, but due to medical problems, I couldn't keep working. As a result, I don't have what they call fun money, or money to spend however I want. My husband gives me money only to spend on the house or the kids, but that's that. I might borrow money here and there, or try to figure something out if I needed essential stuff like hygiene products. This Christmas, my husband gave me $600 as my Christmas gift. I freaked out, thinking I now have to get him a decent gift to match his. So I went shopping and got him the most affordable thing on his wish list, which was a $180 pair of sneakers with his favorite color. I didn't show him the gift until we visited his parents' house for Christmas, and when it was time for gift opening, he opened the gift, saw the sneakers, and looked extremely upset, like he was about to blow up. I asked what's up, and he asked why, in the blue heck, I decided to waste money and get him sneakers, aka the cheapest gift on his wish list. I said it's all I could afford, and he literally lashed out and said, "BS, I gave you $600. That's about the right price for a new gaming console, and it was right there at the top of my wish list." He said it in front of his parents. It was so awkward. I felt so horrible, I wanted to disappear. But I apologized and said I was sorry, but I had other stuff I needed to buy, and money wasn't enough. He took it as in I was blaming him for not giving me enough money and picked an argument with me about how wasteful and financially irresponsible I am, otherwise I wouldn't be struggling with money for so long. I disagreed and said I don't have a salary due to medical issues, not being irresponsible. Also told him he could get the gaming console himself since he has money, but he got all dramatic and ranted about how he wouldn't because then he'll be judged for getting anything for himself. His parents tried to get involved, but he straight up told me how disappointed he was and said that I ruined his Christmas, then went upstairs and avoided talking to me until we got back and the whole argument restarted. He kept repeating that he was disappointed and that I ruined Christmas for him, saying, "Good job messing up," even after I pointed out how rude it was of him to react like that in front of his parents. He's wanting an apology at the moment and is still upset about what I did. Am I the jerk? Edit. For the record, he used to own an Xbox, but it got broken like 3 years ago, and he didn't want to get himself a new one, saying that there are more important things to focus on. I get why he was disappointed, but I argued with him about the kids' gifts as well, since that matters too. Also, I bought gifts for family members, so I'm not sure if I was right to do that, knowing money is tight. My mother-in-law got an expensive gift from him, and so did the rest of the family. Not the jerk. I'm also the breadwinner for my family, and if I gave my significant other money as a gift, that would be her money. If she didn't spend a penny on me, I wouldn't be upset because it was her money. I also tell my significant other to pick whatever she wants for me for Christmas and take it directly out of the checking account, which she has full access to whenever she wants or needs it. You're 100% not the jerk in this situation, and I'm sorry you're going through that. Also, if $180 sneakers is wasteful spending, then a $600 gaming system definitely is also. Am I the jerk for going in my husband's safe without permission and ruining Christmas over a necklace? So, a month ago, I found a necklace in my husband's safe. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I needed my passport, and he keeps it in there, and since he wasn't home, I got it myself. I assumed it was my Christmas present, since that's usually the type of thing he gives me for Christmas. Well, I didn't get the necklace for Christmas, so I was really curious about who it was for, so I asked him. He denied its existence, and when I insisted I had seen the necklace, he got angry and told me not to snoop in his office or safe again. He even said he would change the code as soon as we were home. I know what I saw, so I got angry too, and we had a huge fight. This all happened at my in-laws' house, where we were spending the holidays. It pretty much ruined things for everyone since he was acting cold towards me the whole day, and even my in-laws noticed and kept asking me what had happened. I did tell my mother-in-law, who told me exactly who and what the necklace was for, which made me feel even worse about asking. It was for me, but not for Christmas. They have a family tradition that I didn't know about, and it was supposed to be a surprise. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. A normal, appropriate reaction between two adults to having a surprise ruined is saying something like, "Oh, bummer, that was supposed to be a surprise." Your husband's reaction is not normal nor appropriate. You are most definitely not the jerk, and you deserve an apology. Also, your husband needs to find a more appropriate place to hide gifts. The safe where you keep other important items is not that. Not the jerk, OP, but please keep your eyes open. This feels so much like he had bought it for someone else and only came up with the excuse of, "Oh, it's for you, but for later." If that happened to me, my first thought would be that he bought it for his mistress for Christmas, and when he found out you had seen it, he had to come up with some other occasion that will happen later so that he can either get it back from his mistress to regift it to you or buy you a new one. Now, naturally, I'm not saying this is exactly what it would be. It might be something innocent, but I'd say the odds for it being something bad, like a present for another woman, are unnervingly high. What did your mother-in-law say of the purpose of the necklace? Your description was so vague that there's nothing to steer my mind away from the thought that he did buy it for someone else and got his mother to lie for him. Not the jerk. Your husband handled this badly, really badly. You shouldn't have to ask to access your passport. That's unreasonable. I can see where your husband thought the safe was a good hiding spot, but it wasn't, and oh well. I also think it's reasonable you asked about the necklace. If my husband purchased a necklace valuable enough to put it in a safe, and I didn't get it at the next holiday, and neither did my mother-in-law, yeah, I'd ask. Your husband, however, is acting like you actually committed a crime by getting your passport from the safe that you had the code for, and his immediate reaction is to change the code so you no longer have access. I get he's upset that the surprise is ruined, but it was an accident and you're not at fault. His reaction is over the top, and he owes you an apology for his behavior. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
They should really make a Hallmark Christmas movie about this.
They should, and I'd love to actually see it. Am I the jerk for proposing to my fiance at his family Christmas? My fiance, Jake, loves everything about Christmas and wintertime. We've talked a lot about marriage and are ready to get engaged, so I decided to take the plunge. It was our Christmas to spend with Jake's family, and his mom always goes way over the top with decorations, so it was like a winter wonderland, and it just seemed like the perfect place. During dinner, I got down on one knee and presented him with a wedding band. Jake's dad was pretty confused, but he is the old school type and kept asking what was going on and if I was really proposing. I did anticipate that he would have some issues with a woman proposing. Jake's mom hushed him, so I thought she was on my side. We've had some issues in the past. Jake said yes, and I was over the moon. We celebrated with an amazing meal and family, and it was truly a magical night. Jake's dad did shut up when his mom told him to, but he seemed kind of uncomfortable the rest of the night and kept chuckling. I heard today that Jake's mom is furious, feels like I hijacked her dinner, and was ranting when we left that Christmas is about everyone, not about us, and she feels I used her by latching onto her celebration. She is something of an attention seeker and one-upper, and just that morning had been trying to make me jealous with the jewelry her husband got her. Apparently, she now is saying I have no respect, so I don't know if I was out of line. Generally, yes, you're the jerk to propose at someone else's event. That's rude unless you have permission. This was also a situation where you should be sure Jake was okay with a public proposal in front of his family. And she's calling the mom an attention seeker and one-upper. The irony is hilarious. This is kind of weird to me because this isn't like a wedding or even somebody else's birthday. It's not a day that belongs to somebody, it's Christmas. Famously, the biggest holiday of the year for a lot of people. I don't think the same etiquette applies. Like, yeah, understandable this went south, but most of the families I know would be delighted to be part of something like this. I know we see a lot of "I proposed at somebody else's major life event" posts here, and it's usually not cool, but I honestly think this is different. I also think OP should have checked in first, but this isn't equivalent to proposing at someone else's birthday, unless that person is Jesus. The day doesn't belong to someone. The dinner that OP specifically selected because a lot of someone else's work gets put into it does, though. She could have proposed anywhere else. Man, you are all over this thread. This seems to have struck a nerve. I saw somewhere else that OP wanted to take advantage of mother-in-law's decorations and whatnot, and yeah, that's tacky. But for me, Christmas is a family holiday, and yes, you'd want to do it at a family event to maximize that. That's what Christmas is about. Nobody in my family, or anyone else I know, stands on ceremony like this. For me, this would be adding celebration to celebration. To try and hold a holiday like Christmas hostage because you're hosting seems silly to me, but that's me. So I maintain that yeah, OP very much should have checked in. But if your attitude towards Christmas dinner is, "I must be the center of attention as the host because this is my day," the way people are about birthdays and weddings, that's a little Scroogey. You're the one responding to my comment, my dude.
Reddit fight!
You okay?
Sorry, I got a little excited.
OP put no work into the decorations, made no effort to let them know, nothing. If you think Christmas is a family holiday, then the family should have agreed to have been a part of it and would have been perfectly fine within their rights to respectfully decline. Hold a holiday like Christmas hostage? You can't be serious. They're at a dinner hosted by his mom. She could have proposed anywhere else at any other time. Nobody's holding an entire holiday hostage. You're being willfully ignorant if you can't see the issue. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know.
I think neither of them should be getting dessert, to be honest.
Am I the jerk for arguing with the person at the DMV about my eye color? This is the stupidest thing ever, but here we go. My eyes are green and blue, and sometimes look gray depending on the lighting and whatever color I'm wearing. I used to just put blue for eye color, but about 10 years ago, I had a DMV employee change it to green after he told me that blue was not the predominant color. I've left it as green ever since, and it's never been an issue. Except now, it's suddenly an issue. A couple months ago, I moved to a new state and had to get a new license. They let my husband and me schedule back-to-back appointments and come in together. I filled out the application, handed it over, and waited while the person we had our appointment with looked over my husband's application. She was friendly with my husband and joked around with him about the process. When she got to me, her entire demeanor changed from happy and friendly to the stereotypical DMV employee. As she was inputting my application, she said,
I don't know who you're trying to fool, but your eyes aren't green. I'm going to have to change that.
While I thought she was a bit rude about it, I said, no problem, just switch it to blue. She looked at me like I was an idiot, obviously my interpretation, and said,
Your eyes are obviously brown to anyone who actually pays attention. I'm changing it to that.
I told her that she could put blue or green, but not brown, because my eyes clearly aren't brown. We argued back and forth before she finally told me she was putting my eye color as brown, or I could get out without a new license. I said fine, whatever, and I got my new license with the wrong eye color. My husband let me vent in the car, and then we laughed about how stupid and inconsequential the whole thing was. Turns out, it's not actually inconsequential. My new job required a high security clearance, and the facility has very strict security protocols. I have to show both my badge and a non-expired photo ID every time I enter the building, both of which are scrutinized. I've been denied entry 6 times since getting my new ID because not only does the eye color printed on my license not match their records, it also doesn't match my eyes. My husband brought this whole ordeal up at Christmas dinner with my family as a funny story, and I mentioned that I had to explain to my supervisor what happened, and he was going to contact whoever was in charge at the DMV to get it fixed. My new corrected license was mailed to me 2 weeks later, got it 3 days ago. My mom told me that I was a jerk because I probably got that poor girl fired, and she was just trying to do her job. I don't think I'm the jerk, but I also don't enjoy the thought of getting someone fired. and my mom is pretty adamant that I'm the biggest jerk in the world for getting someone fired before Christmas. So, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the employee? Please let us know.
She got herself fired. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
I gave the customer exactly what they asked for. I used to work for a major telecom company in Western Canada, taking customer service phone calls. I had someone call in to set up service with our internet and television services. Internet was always pretty straightforward. It was just a matter of selecting their speed. TV was a bit more complicated. On the one hand, the service was not physically turned off at their house, and they already owned their own digital equipment, so we were able to do what is called a self-install. I just had to set up the account, add all their equipment and channels, and then post the order without creating a work ticket. But we hit a snag on the most complicated part of the process: channel selection. I was explaining that the 3-month introductory offer they had seen advertised only covered our base level package and what channels were included, and the customer said she wanted all of the channels. I explained that with the wide variety of channels we carried, that was not efficient or cheap, and offered to go over her family's needs, but she said she had to go out, and when she got back in an hour, she expected their service to be working. Well, the customer gets what the customer asks for. All the channels, HBO, Super Channel, and the International Rugby, Soccer, Cricket Network. Sure, all 4 exclusive channels at $25 a month each. Why wouldn't they want those? Every foreign language specialty channel. If that is what she asked for, that's what I would give her. When I was done, the total cost of the package was over $600 a month. I made sure to detail in the notes that the caller requested all channels, and when I advised against that, the customer declined to discuss their specific needs and disconnected the call, stating they expected their service on the same day. I even emailed her a list of the channels they were subscribed to. When the caller received the first bill, for nearly 2 months worth of service since we billed in advance, her husband called in irate. After reading my notes and coming to talk to me, my team leader struck a compromise that they would waive the minimum 1-month period for adding and removing a channel, but the customer still ended up being billed over $100 for the 1 week that they had all the channels. I got a verbal warning from my manager, my TL supervisor, to be more thorough in the future when discussing the caller's needs, but nothing else. How I was supposed to do that after they hung up the phone over the very idea of clarifying, I still to this day don't know. I shared an apartment with a roommate in the late 80s, and after having cable TV for a couple months, we agreed to split the cost of a pay-per-view New Year's Eve special program for the party we were having. The show was lame, but it was listed as only $20, so it wasn't a big loss. The big surprise was that our next bill showed the pay-per-view purchased at -$20, so our monthly bill was cheaper. Of course, we had to try again to see if it was a fluke. We ordered some pay-per-view boxing match, and it also credited our bill the price of the event. From that moment on, we carefully purchased enough pay-per-view events to nearly eliminate our monthly bill, and did this for the next 2 years before we moved out. Honestly, your manager shouldn't have warned you. What else were you supposed to do? Honestly, I'm at a loss as to what you could have done. Exactly. She said she wanted all the channels, even though OP tried warning her of how expensive and impractical that is. OP also offered to go over her family's needs to find which package was right for her family, but she refused to do so. So OP respected her request to have every channel. Honestly, if the husband should be mad at anyone, it should be at his wife, as she didn't specify that she actually wanted only certain channels. OP is not a mind reader, so of course they have to honor her request and mention it in their notes, which the manager should have read and understood why they did what they did. Karen gets upset with me because I ate too much at her Christmas dinner. As a child, whenever I was invited to people's houses, my mom told me it was etiquette to eat the food they made. She would always tell me to put a considerable amount and eat all of it since it would be rude not to. First, she said it would be wasting food, and second, it would seem as if I didn't enjoy the food, which is mean since a lot of effort was put into making it. I've always followed this rule and thought it was true. If I cooked a buttload of food and no one ate any of it, I'd be heartbroken. My boyfriend of 7 months invited me to his family Christmas dinner. I've met his parents very briefly, but nothing too formal. Anyway, we get to the food, and I was pretty hungry, and everything looked really amazing. I made sure to fill my plate, but not overfill, just equal amounts of everything on the table. I ate it all, and to be honest, was pretty stuffed. His mother then asked me if I wanted seconds. There was still a lot of food on the table. I took her up on the offer and put a bit more of the pasta salad on my plate. My boyfriend did give me a strange look, but I thought nothing of it at the time. Dinner comes, and I chose to eat a slice of cheesecake. We then had coffee, all sitting around the fire and telling funny stories. Everyone seemed like they were in a very good mood, and everything was great. After everything, I was honestly so happy because I was worried about dinner and meeting his parents, but I thought that everything went well. We left his parents' house in separate cars as I came directly from my parents' house to him. We reached my apartment, and I can tell he's totally ticked off. I asked him what's wrong, and he just blew up in my face, saying that I had no manners, telling me that he had never seen me eat as much as I did at his parents' house, and that it was very embarrassing. After further prying, he said that in his culture, when you eat a lot at a person's house, it's disrespectful because you should never go to a house on an empty stomach. He said it makes a person look desperate. He said on the car ride home, his mom was talking about how embarrassing and unmannered I was to eat so much. I told him that she told me to put seconds, and he said that's done to be a good hostess, but a guest should never take up that offer. I explained to him my reasoning, and he called that BS. I honestly feel terrible, but told him if he explained to me beforehand, I wouldn't have eaten so much. But he said he thought it was common knowledge. It's been 2 days, and neither of us will really talk until the other one apologizes. I know it's petty to not apologize, but I sincerely don't think I did anything wrong. But I guess that's why I'm here. Edit. I've been debating on whether revealing where my boyfriend is from. I have been receiving a lot of comments, so his family is Arab. I myself am Hispanic. Not the jerk. That's so toxic. You didn't even know about these cultural rules. I hate saying break up with him, but break up with him. You were just trying to be nice, and you enjoyed the food. And on top of that, he uses his culture as an excuse, but then disrespects what she learned growing up and thought was proper etiquette. He really should have told her beforehand. What a weird thing to assume, that she would automatically know to eat only a little. I'm very curious what culture this is, and every culture I know of, basically to a universal point, the exact opposite is true. Pretty sure that this is just a weird household with weird expectations, not a cultural thing. And if it is some niche culture, it's their fault for not understanding that the vast majority of the world hopes and enjoys when guests love the food that they make, eat a lot, don't leave hungry, etc. My thoughts exactly. My husband is Egyptian, and when you go to my in-laws for dinner, they basically demand you stuff yourself. This past summer, my husband's aunt married a white guy, and my mother-in-law had them and us over for dinner. The new husband actually had to get a little annoyed and say, "Can I finish what I have?" because they kept putting more food on his already full plate. Not the jerk. That sounds like some impossible game to play where no one ever wins. Either you're rude for eating too much or rude for declining a host's offer of seconds. Throw the boyfriend and the whole family away. He set OP up for failure and then blames OP for failing on this weird custom. Red flags all around. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend and his family? Please let us know. I really hope you cut things off with this guy. Stay with him, and this is just a glimpse of what you'll be dealing with on a regular basis. My sister ruined our Christmas by announcing her pregnancy. Way worse than it sounds. I, 24 female, am the youngest of 4, and I've never been particularly close to my eldest sister Jenny, 37 female. She started dating her now ex-husband Sam, 38 male, when they were in high school, so he's pretty much been around my entire life. Sam is a really great guy. He was an older brother to me growing up, and my other sisters and I all have a great relationship with him. Jenny and Sam have 2 kids together, my nephew and niece, who are 8 and 5. About 3 years ago, Jenny and Sam's relationship completely fell apart, and she left him and moved to a different city. I've heard both sides of the story, and I know I'm inherently biased against my sister because she left my ex-brother-in-law to raise 2 kids by himself. Things were pretty rough after she left, but we all pitched in and did our best to help with the kids. My sister and Sam eventually finalized their divorce, and she gave up custody of the kids and is very low contact with them. I know Sam blamed himself for her leaving because she had accused him of not loving her as much as he loved the kids, but the rest of the family were firmly on his side. He did eventually move on and started dating one of his close friends at the beginning of the year. Fast forward to 2 months ago, my sister moved back to our city with her new boyfriend. She's only been to see her kids once, supervised, and my niece almost didn't recognize her. My parents still wanted the opportunity to finally have Christmas as a complete family again. I thought the whole thing would be a disaster before it even began. I knew my ex-brother-in-law only planned to stay long enough to drop off the kids and say a quick hello to everyone else. In the 15-minute window he was at my parents' house, my sister announced that she was pregnant, and things went downhill after that. The kids were so confused, and my niece asked if the new baby would live with them. My sister laughed and said the baby would live with her and her new boyfriend. My ex-brother-in-law left with the kids in tow, and I kind of lost it. I yelled at my sister and called her selfish and cruel and a whole slew of insults. Anything I could come up with at that moment before storming out myself. My other sisters support my actions, but my parents are disappointed that I reacted that way and made a scene during Christmas. They're not demanding that I apologize or anything, but have put me on one heck of a guilt trip and want me to resolve things with my sister. I'm perfectly happy not being in contact with her given what she's put my niece and nephew through, but I do wonder if I reacted too harshly. Was I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your sister turned Christmas into a way to dunk on her ex and her own kids. The kids were so confused and asked my niece if the new baby would live with them. My sister laughed and said the baby would live with her and her boyfriend. This is the worst part. She told her own kids that their half-sibling wouldn't be staying with them and laughed at them. She's cruel and heartless. Definitely not the jerk. Seriously, how terrible of a person do you have to be to rub it in your own kids' faces that this new baby is wanted and they aren't? My heart breaks for those poor kids. OP, not the jerk. The fact that her kids automatically assumed that the baby would stay with them as though it's normal for moms to have kids and leave them. My heart truly hurts for them. I hope new boyfriend is a good guy. Although if he didn't watch that scene with a "what the heck have I done," he's probably not, because she seems like the type to do that more than once. Not the jerk. She was cruel to her kids for literally no reason. Watch her in 25 years ranting about "none of my kids care about me" and playing victim when she obviously couldn't care less about them now that they need a mom. OP. Not sure if she was intentionally trying to hurt them because I don't think she ever properly loved them and doesn't realize how much of an issue that is. She was definitely trying to rub it in my ex-brother-in-law's face and didn't care about them being collateral damage. I don't know which is worse, to be honest. I obviously haven't spoken to her since Christmas Eve, but I'll be visiting the kids later today. I just hope they'll get through this and know that none of it is their fault. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. That sister sounds like a monster, to be honest. I think those babies will be much better off without her in their life. I do hope they end up with a good actual mother, though. Strange coworker still wears his wedding ring even though he's a widower. I called him out on it. Uh-oh. Hi. A couple of weeks ago, we had a new employee hired at the company. He's a good guy and a widower named James. He's 36. And to my knowledge, his wife passed 8 months ago. Me, female 32, and the other coworkers got along well with him. However, I noticed that he's still wearing his wedding band on his finger. It kind of confused me a bit, and I couldn't help but bring it up with him while on lunch break. We talked, and I pointed out that he was being misleading by still wearing his wedding band when he's a widower. He looked quite bothered by what I said, but I tried to explain that I think that he was giving people the wrong idea or impression about his relationship status since he's technically single and on his own right now. Don't want to sound cruel, but I'm speaking from technical angle. James said that he didn't give it much thought, meaning he doesn't care what people think, and that even if he wasn't wearing his wedding band and some woman approached him, he'd still turn them down since he's obviously not interested. For some reason, things got awkward and everyone stopped eating and just stared at James and me. I told him I don't know, but that really felt generally misleading of him, as in making people think he's in a relationship, married, when he's not, regardless of how he felt about being in a relationship. He got upset, called me rude, and said that I repeatedly disrespected his marriage and his late wife's memory with what I said, then took his stuff and walked away. My coworkers said regardless of who was right or wrong, though some said he overreacted, there was no reason for me to bring this up in the first place, and caused a scene and make James upset with us, like now he's not speaking to me and others who sided with me. Am I the jerk? Did I overstep, or did he overreact? This was just a conversation we were casually having with the other coworkers, and I didn't use any insensitive tones or anything. But we had a discussion, and it suddenly turned into an argument. I tried to let things calm down, but the situation got out of my hand unexpectedly. You're the jerk. A wedding ring isn't a sign to others you aren't available. It's a commitment to a person you love. His wife might be gone, but if he's not ready to move on, then he's still committed to her. Your confusion about his status isn't his concern. OP, if you're reading this, you are one callous jerk. It's not up to you to determine how long it's acceptable for someone else to grieve or to police what they wear, jewelry, clothing, or otherwise. How dare you? Seriously, humongous, cold-hearted, unfeeling, socially inept jerk. OP is such a cold-hearted jerk. A wedding band isn't legal papers. It's not supposed to represent his technical, legal relationship status. It's a token of love and dedication to the person he married. He's not wearing it to let others know he's available. He's wearing it for her memory and to show he's still committed to her, to his wife who passed recently and who he's still grieving. OP massively overstepped James' boundaries. He can wear his wedding band anytime, anywhere, and for whatever reason. It still wouldn't be OP's business. Her telling him is super rude and inappropriate. It seems like she's interested in the coworker. Back down, OP. He's not interested in you. And even if he was, any attraction he had would be wiped out by you overstepping his boundaries. That was my first thought too, that OP's problem with the ring is that she can't hit on him because of it. That she is salty, he's not interested in her, he's not available. OP wants to consider him single and ready to mingle instead of widowed. She is salty, he's emotionally unavailable for her and hates to be reminded of it whenever she sees that ring. Hates that she can't just forget his wife ever existed, and hates he can't just forget his wife ever existed. Good news for the coworker is that now OP will never have a chance with him after this. OP just saved him from ever making the mistake of getting together with her. You're the jerk. I hope he goes to HR because of this. Not the jerk. Is it misleading for him to keep wearing that ring? Yeah, pretty much. But I still probably wouldn't have said anything about it. You do have a good point though. He needs to move on for his own mental health. He could also be missing out on new relationship opportunities because he refuses to move on, which is unfair to you and the other women who work there. Why didn't you shovel out my parking spots while you were shoveling yours? So a bit of backstory to set the stage. I live in a condo in a multi-unit residence. Each unit has 2 assigned parking spots, one right next to the building and the second a ways away in the middle of the lot. One of my downstairs neighbors is an elderly lady with around a 40-year-old son who lives with her. She parks next to the building, he parks in the spot in the center. She's not disabled, but is temporarily using a walker after slipping on some ice. I live by myself, so I just use my one spot near the building and let the second one sit vacant. So today it snowed, and we do have a plow that comes through. However, instead of moving my car, it's usually less disruptive to my life to just brush off my car and shovel the snow into the main thoroughfare for the plow to collect. I work from home, so I rarely drive. While I was out shoveling, this lady comes out and asks if I can clear her out as well. It's not much extra work, so I'm like, sure, I'll help you out. After clearing my car off and shoveling the snow around her car out into the main area, I start to head back upstairs. She comes out and asks why I didn't finish the job. I stare at her absently for a good 5 seconds as my brain struggles to process the question, before I finally manage, what job? She complains that I didn't brush her car off before shoveling her spot out, so if her son brushes the car off, it'll mean there's more snow on the ground, and then complains that I didn't do any work at all clearing her son's car. And to recap, yes, she said her son brushes the car off. At no point did she indicate she would do any work of any sort, only that her son would. Again, I understand she slipped on some ice, so maybe she was sore, but she wasn't disabled, and her son was perfectly capable himself. I know he has a job and drives and such, so why is any of this my concern? I lean on the shovel and stare at her for about 10 seconds, before she grows uncomfortable and asks, "Why are you staring like that?" So I say, I live alone, own one car, shoveled myself out, and out of the kindness of my heart, cleared out your car so you can get in. You live with an adult son who owns his own vehicle, is perfectly capable of shoveling both himself and yourself out. You're complaining that I didn't do all the work despite zero stake in your situation, and you don't understand why I might be absolutely gobsmacked by all this? I could see the hamster wheel spinning, then her face brightens as if she had discovered a glaring loophole in some cosmic law that will compel me to do her bidding. "But you have that second spot you never use. Why don't you just shovel that out so my son can use it?" I say nothing more and continue to lean on my shovel with a deadpan expression. After another few moments, she turns around and wordlessly waddles back indoors. I'd like to think she realized she was acting like an idiot, but at least she recognized that I wasn't going to play ball. So yeah, this is going to be a fun winter, I'll bet. Reply: my husband got a snowblower for Christmas last year and did all the sidewalks on our side of the street. The neighbors at the end of the block expected him to go around the corner and do their long side, and insinuated that he could make up for it by doing their driveway instead. They actually came to our door to complain about the half-done job my husband did. My husband just asked if they wanted their money back and stared at them. They were at least embarrassed enough to walk away without a word. He stopped doing the whole block after that and only did the immediate neighbors. So you can imagine how irritated they all are now that we just got a foot of snow. Reply. Reminds me of a few years ago when I owned a landscaping business. I cleaned quite a few houses in this HOA estate, expensive houses, so the people living there had no shortage on money. This old lady that lived next to one of my regular clients was a piece of work. We've had a few interactions that went less than stellar. One of them was the following. My client and her shared a piece of grass between their driveways that was split by their boundary wall on the inside but not on the sidewalk. So half the grass was my regular client's to maintain and half on her side was hers. I always mowed right up to her driveway, which was about 3x2 section of grass, just because it looked crappy if the grass was half cut. She stammered out one day at about the third time I was servicing the garden and proceeded to tear into me that I did a bad job. I was dumbstruck as my client was very happy and I had a high standard of work and always left his garden perfect. After tearing into me for about 40 seconds, I got a chance to ask her what she meant, and she said I only mow the one side of her driveway and not the other. I almost asked her to repeat herself to make sure I heard correctly. It took me a few more seconds to tell her that he actually pays me to do it, and that if she wants me to give her a quote, I could do so. She stammered on about how I have no respect for old people and that we should be doing things for them since we are young and they are old. I just turned around and walked away as I had nothing to say to her. There were a few others, like her bringing out her garden bags and just dumping them into my waste trailer. Her ratting me out to the HOA over making excessive noise, daytime between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m., accusing my employees of intimidating her and making her feel unsafe and stealing things out of her yard, etc. Most of my clients had a seat on the HOA committee, so they never believed any of her nonsense because they knew me and dealt with my guys weekly. Her complaints actually helped because they made the HOA aware of me and spread word of good work done, so more people signed up. Am I the jerk for asking my wife to wear contact lenses to an event? This happened a few weeks ago, but me, 30 male, my wife, who's 30 female, she's still upset about it, so I'm bringing this to Reddit. My company had a Christmas party a few weeks ago, and employees were allowed to bring their significant others. It was a fairly fancy event, and everyone was expected to dress up. When my wife came downstairs, ready to get in the car to go to the restaurant where the event was being held, she was wearing appropriate clothing for a fancy dinner, but she was wearing her glasses. I gently asked if she would mind putting on contact lenses just for the night, since this was a fancy event. She looked shocked and said she didn't understand why she would need to put on contacts. My wife has terrible eyesight and wears glasses every day, but will put on contacts if she's doing something like skiing or surfing or playing sports. But she also usually puts on contacts for special occasions, like the ones we're about to go to. I reminded her of this, and she said she didn't want to put contacts in, and asked continuously if I'm unattracted to her when she wears glasses. But after some back and forth, she begrudgingly agreed to go put on the contacts. Well, when we got to the restaurant, coworkers and their significant others were walking around the room mingling, and my wife turned to me fuming. She immediately noticed several other women were wearing glasses, and she went off about how she couldn't believe that I had the audacity to force her to put on contacts when clearly no one at the event even cared. I guess me asking her to wear contacts led her to believe that no one else in the room would be wearing glasses, even though I never said that. I just wanted her to look her best at this important work event. I really don't get why this has blown up the way it has. This happened over 2 weeks ago, and my wife is still acting cold towards me and making remarks under her breath that I'm the jerk and that I don't find her attractive. I don't think I'm the jerk, and I think she's being ridiculous and insecure, but she will not let go of this. Am I the jerk? I just wanted her to look her best? Which means she doesn't look her best, in your opinion, when she's wearing her glasses. You're the jerk. Seriously, OP's wife pays money to be able to better see his shallow self, and this is the reaction she gets? You're the jerk. Glasses are not part of a dress code, no matter how strict. Shallow is definitely the right word, and insecure. I find it ironic that he called her insecure when she's not bothered at all about wearing glasses, and he apparently is. And it's all about control. Not what she feels comfortable wearing, but what he wants her to wear. Giant jerk. Not to mention that she had already probably spent hours picking an outfit, putting on makeup, doing hair, and then when she comes out in her full glam, instead of complimenting her on all the work she put in to make OP look better at his work function, he complains about her wearing glasses? That woman didn't even have to come, let alone dress up for OP, but she did it for him and he complains. You're the jerk. You're accusing her of being insecure when you were so insecure you had the audacity to make her wear contacts to an event? Seriously? She's better than I am. I would have told you to buzz off and go alone. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Oh, you've got a lot to learn, buddy boy. Can you imagine if I asked Reddit boy to wear contacts to an event instead of his glasses?
I wouldn't mind, to be honest.
Oh, never mind.
You will work this dangerous position without training. Leads to have fun talking to the union. My dad was visiting us for Christmas, and as usual, I got him to share some more stories about his youth, and he shared a time where he used malicious compliance to not only shut up one of his bosses and get him into trouble. Many years ago, back when Dad was a college student, he earned extra money for living expenses by working in a car manufacturing plant. The state at the time was a closed shop, which meant you had to join the union in order to work, unless you were in an executive position. One of the rules said union set up at Dad's workplace was that no employee could work certain positions unless they had been trained for it. This included positions such as forklift operator and trash compactor. This was included in the contract and was a no-break rule. Enter George, the manager, made-up name. Unlike many in this thread, George was actually a nice fellow, but to quote Joseph from It's a Wonderful Life, he has the IQ of a jackrabbit and didn't always think things through. One Saturday afternoon, Dad came into work when George pulled him aside. I need you to do me a favor, son. The trash compactor is jammed, and I need someone to crawl in and unjam it. You're the smallest of all of us, so it shouldn't be a problem for you. Now, not only had Dad not been trained for loading the trash compactor, but even he knew crawling in there would be a dumb idea. George, I haven't been trained for this position. George got all flustered and told him, just do it. Dad then got an idea for some malicious compliance. I'll do it, but is it okay if I ask one of the other guys to spot me and make sure I don't get squashed? George said, that'll be fine. Just make sure the job is done. Dad then headed to his union shop leader, Kenny, made-up name. Like George, Kenny was a decent fellow, but was very protective of his workers. Dad told Kenny what had happened and asked him to spot him. Cue Kenny turning at least 5 shades of purple before storming to George's office. Dad told me the whole floor went silent as Kenny unloaded on George for trying to make a poor college kid do something so dangerous, and that this will be recorded and written up. Kenny stormed out, leaving a frightened-looking George quaking in his steel-toed boots. The compactor ended up getting fixed without someone crawling into it, and George always asked if people were trained for positions before asking them to do it. Karen demands to use our hotel pool even though it's closed. Just for background info, I started working at this landmark hotel over the summer after being furloughed from a major hotel chain. It was my first time being a front desk agent, and I was so excited because this place is famous. I really wish I could identify this hotel because there's so much that needs to be said. I'm talking corrupt to the gills. I was really in awe when I started. I was getting tipped in champagne and 100s. Everyone I met at parties or just hanging out was pretty taken aback when I told them where I worked. But the magic started to wear off. I don't even know where to start. First and most importantly, the one and only hotel manager felt that she only needed to be present from 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. Let's call her Jen. Her supervising manager goes way back with the owner, friends from the old country, and doesn't believe in security, or maintenance, or anything that might be initially subtractive of profits, even if it's beneficial in the long run. Our hotel plus restaurant attracts the worst kinds of tourists. We're talking 500 restaurant covers on a weekend night. Some nice, but the majority are stuck-up people that are willing to pay premiums for mediocre food just to be seen at our property. Worst restaurant managers ever when I started. 2 of them, plus a few servers, were hauled out in cop cars after a few months of me being there, $20K each in fraud. Kitchen chefs go on crazy tirades targeting their staff. Constant complaints about the smell of mildew because Big Boss doesn't want to replace the AC. It doesn't even seem to work in some rooms. Numerous health code violations. The foulest, in my opinion, is that the custom duvets and throw pillows are not washed after each guest because Big Boss is too cheap to buy extras. Yet people still pay a starting price of $7.99 per night. There's so much more, but I want to focus on the story of me getting fired. Because I always worked PM, I suppose it was just my fate that I always got the worst customers. Anyway, my first impression of this guest didn't raise any red flags. Her check-in and payment was completed by AM, but it was my responsibility to give her the room key once her suite was ready. I was informed that she was in our restaurant enjoying lunch, so I thought I'd wait until she was done. But no, we'll call this restaurant manager Michael. He comes up and tells me the guest was upset about the restaurant in some way. He wants my help to recover. I say okay, I'll bring her room key to her now and throw in a comp bottle of Prosecco. She's super sweet to me. I didn't understand why Michael was sweating it. Fast forward to our dinner shift. Now I understand. We have a beautiful pool that serves as the centerpiece of our restaurant. Guests can't use said pool during dinner because, as mentioned, we're doing 500 covers. Guests know this. We tell them when they check in. Anyway, this guest was clearly mixing her alcohol with something because she really felt like it was appropriate for her and her friends to be in the pool in front of all of those people. Michael couldn't get her out. She basically lost it on him, so he came to me. I go down there and I put on my most polite tone and I inform her of the policy and I apologize for any confusion or miscommunication that may have occurred when she did her check-in. This jerk was not having it.
Forget you. I paid for this room, which means I can stay in this pool if I want. That's why I booked this room closest to the pool, as I paid so much I can be here when I want.
She breaks a champagne flute, knocks her phone to the ground, and just refuses to budge. And I said okay and walked away. I didn't know what to do, and with no security or manager on site, I did what I felt was most appropriate. I called the police department and asked them to send an officer at their convenience. Not an emergency, just send someone. Well, this woman didn't want to listen to me, and she sure didn't want to listen to the cops. But miraculously, they're able to get her out of the pool when one of her friends realizes this isn't a game. It's time to get out. The cops ask if I want them evicted, and I said no, which is kind of regrettable on my part. I'm upgrading a much kinder, sober guest to a bigger suite as I witness them all drunk stubble around the hotel until eventually finding their own room. Once I'm back at my desk, I get a call from the drunk guest yelling at me, saying that I embarrassed her and demanding a refund. She's too drunk to understand what she's saying in my opinion, so I politely hang up. So she comes down to my desk. She's yelling about wanting to leave and demanding a refund because I embarrassed her. I say, I can't offer you a refund for my position, but when the manager comes in, you're welcome to speak with her. In the meantime, I'd be happy to have my bellman assist you with your bags. This goes on for a good hour. She keeps going up to her room and circling back to my desk shouting the same crap, but still never following through and leaving. Then, on her final trip to my desk, she wants me to walk her to her room because she's lost and locked out. She was scary calm with crazy eyes. My instincts said heck no. I can see all of the rooms from my desk. I point to hers, which had the door wide open, and I say, that's your room. I'm unable to help you at the moment. She just kept bugging me. But fortunately, I spot Michael, and as comeuppance for his hiding from the police and not taking any responsibility and really stepping in and helping me with the guest, I have him walk her to her room because I no longer felt safe. The anticlimactic ending. My boss Jen calls me the next day, my day off, to tell me that I'm being let go because I'm no longer a fit for the hotel. It's not working out. I knew it was because of last night, and I felt like absolute crap. My hands were tied. I would have been in trouble had they have been left to stay in the pool, and I'm clearly in trouble for not letting them stay, out of respect for our policy. Anyway, I'm really happy to say that the karmic universe has granted me a position at a true 5-star that takes measures to keep its workers safe, has 24/7 security, and there's always a manager on duty to help. It sucked being fired, but honestly, that crazy ride had to come to an end some kind of way. Am I the jerk for forcing my son to wait to marry his then high school girlfriend? I, female 50s, have 2 sons, Dan, who's 22, and Sam, who's 27. Dan started dating Fran in their junior year. Towards the end of the school year, Dan came to me and said he wanted to marry Fran. At the time, Dan had multiple college options, which he was going to decline to stay in our town and marry Fran. I obviously didn't support this. I wanted my son to go to college and knew he wanted that too, as he had always been ambitious. I told my son that he had his whole life ahead of him and he could get married later, but didn't need to rush it. I told him that if he went to college and waited, even just a year or 2, I'd pay for his tuition. At the time, I didn't know how serious their relationship was, as they'd been dating for a little over a year and was scared it wouldn't work out and he'd waste this opportunity. My son happily accepted this offer and agreed with me that it would be best to wait. This year, my son graduated college but maintained a long-distance relationship with Fran, and they announced their engagement a couple months ago. We were all ecstatic about it. Sometime between then and now, My son told Fran that I was the reason he waited until now to propose. I wasn't aware until Christmas when during dinner, Fran said she wanted to say something. She began saying I paid my son to not get married to her and actively tried to ruin their relationship. She then said she was blessed that evil hadn't won and couldn't wait to have a long and happy marriage. Everyone was silent and didn't really know what to say. My son approached me later to apologize and said she had twisted his words, but it's been constantly weighing on my mind as friends and family present all have different opinions. Edit. If my son had married Fran out of high school, he wouldn't have gone to college. My son chose to go to a school so far away, there were closer options, but he liked the school he chose. I will be showing Dan this thread and update if he responds. Fran currently works at her mother's bakery. She wants to be a stay-at-home mom once they get married and was waiting for Dan to come back home. Update. Dan and Fran have talked and cleared the air around this situation. Fran feels awful about what she said and realized she should have come and talked to me privately. This situation, however, brought up other issues between the two and their future, as Dan expressed to Fran he would like to go to law school. Fran wants them to start their life together and thinks it's unfair for Dan to make them wait 4+ years. Dan is currently home and we will be dealing with this together. Thank you all for your advice. Dan has read this thread and is now feeling unsure about their relationship. Not the jerk. Your future daughter-in-law showed to the entire family that you were correct and that your son was wise to delay the marriage. By evil, did Fran mean stopping her from getting pregnant at 18 and raising a baby she's obviously not ready for? OP was correct. Fran was definitely not ready to get married at 18 and probably isn't even now. OP's son should rethink marrying her now or ever. Fran's treating her partner's mom like an obstacle to their love story, even though she's just looking out for them. Calling her mother-in-law evil might be the precursor to a very strained, potentially toxic mother-in-law/daughter-in-law relationship. Also, it was just an offer that OP willingly took them up on. So if she's going to be mad at anyone, she should be mad at her partner. He's the one that delayed their marriage. I think Fran is operating on the emotional level of a kid. Also, she doesn't dare get mad at the son/boyfriend/fiance because she would prove exactly what she is, a Karen in the making. So there has to be a target for her immature and childish behavior. It will not be a long and blessed marriage. I think the son will go ahead, the marriage will last maybe 7 years or so, there will be kids. There are always kids in these situations, as if to guarantee the greatest possible destructive return. And Fran will end up a bitter, divorced girl with a kid or two. That is my prediction. I just hope Fran pulls some sort of stunt that makes the son really see her for what she is and dump her. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Fran? Please let us know.
I had a few friends who got married right out of high school. They're all divorced now and broke and unhappy and stuff.
Don't lie to tech support. At my previous job, I worked on the business support desk. One of the products we offered was a SIM/data management service. Basically, you would buy a block of data, say 100 gigabytes per month, and however many SIM cards you needed. Then you can assign data to SIM cards as needed via the customer portal. We weren't the actual cellular network provider, we just sold data and SIMs on their network. We would often receive tickets regarding SIM cards not working. 90% of the time, it was a configuration issue. You needed to use the correct APN to connect. Other issues were signal problems and faulty devices, not the SIM cards themselves. They don't just suddenly become faulty, bar the odd dud from the factory. On this particular day, I received an urgent ticket first thing in the morning about a SIM that was offline and not reachable. The tech who logged it was very insistent that this was an urgent issue and wanted constant updates. I checked from our portal and could see that the SIM still had data assigned, so it was not a simple issue of running out of the assigned data. Our first response in this sort of situation is to have the user check the physical SIM, take it out and reinsert it, and confirm that the correct APN was in use. Our terms and conditions firmly state that this is the user's responsibility, as the SIM could be anywhere in the country. Not long after asking the above, the tech responds that the checks have been done and asking for an ETA on resolution. At this point, I was pretty sure that they were lying and had not checked anything. I get a sixth sense about these things, but had no proof. At this point, our next option is to have the cellular network provider check the SIM, which takes at least a few hours. With the tech continuing to hound me, I ended up escalating the call with the provider, who confirmed that there were no issues in the area and that the SIM was offline. By now, it was mid-afternoon, and I was getting very annoyed with how the tech kept asking for escalations and ETAs when I knew they were lying about performing the requested checks from their side. If they had done the checks, this would mean that the SIM card just failed after working for months. That just didn't happen. I decided that it was time to comply with the tech's request to expedite the issue. I drafted an email confirming 1. The tech had performed the requested checks. 2. The cellular network could not find any issues. 3. The SIM had sufficient data available. 4. The next step was a SIM swap, which I would ensure was done immediately. As soon as the email was sent, I called the individual responsible for SIM swaps, and by the end of the call, the swap was complete. For those that don't know, a SIM swap is irreversible and renders the old SIM completely unusable. Shortly after, the tech's manager got involved and asked us to postpone the SIM swap as they wanted to check the device on site, confirming my suspicion that this was never done. I replied that the tech had informed us that all the on-site checks were done already and that the SIM swap was expedited due to his insistence. Turns out that the SIM was in some networking equipment in a mine in a remote province of the country. The tech's company now had to send someone to our office to pick up the new SIM, then drive all the way to a remote mine to replace it, potentially a 2-day job. I'm not sure if the tech received any disciplinary action, but he never asked to escalate a SIM issue ever again. There was no fallout for us as we were covered by the terms and conditions. Edit. As some commenters have noted, technically SIM swaps can be reversed. However, we did not offer this, most likely as the network provider did not allow it. Reply. The trick I learned is to ask them a question about whatever it is you want to check. Example, use, is your copier plugged directly into the wall or a surge protector? And if the latter, tell me how many lights and of what color are showing, as opposed to, is your machine plugged in? The former gets them to plug the machine in and resolves the problem. The latter gets a belligerent customer who knows for sure the machine is plugged in and has to have a tech drive 3 hours to plug in the machine. Am I the jerk for not sharing my daughter's university fund with my stepson? My husband and I are a couple in our 40s. We've been married for 10 years now. We both have 17-year-old kids. He has a son with his ex-wife and me a daughter from my husband who passed. When we married, we chose to keep a portion of our finances separate due to both having kids already, previous real estate investments, and he having expenses like alimony and child support payments. We do combine our incomes for our mortgage and household expenses, our retirement, major purchases, etc. The college funds we have set up for our kids have always been part of our separate finances, and as a result, neither one of us have had terribly in-depth discussions with the other regarding the amount put into each kid's fund. I never expected both kids' funds to be penny for a penny equal, but I did expect them to be closer than what I recently discovered. Both kids have now applied to and both been accepted to university as it's their senior year. Now that a majority of scholarships are in, tuition and housing etc. are more concrete for each of their school options. We've started the specifics of the budget conversations. My daughter's college/graduation fund is worth roughly $150,000, while my stepson has approximately a $15,000 amount. Here's where the argument happened. With her scholarships, my daughter will have more than enough for undergraduate school and likely her graduate work as well, assuming she maintains her traditionally good grades. In fact, she'll likely have a good bit left over. Fine, I say, she can use it for a down payment on a home, whatever. After scholarships and the $15K from his dad, my stepson will still owe for undergrad. My husband feels like we should just combine the funds. When we married, we very specifically kept certain things separate, and this was one of them. So I can't help but feel unwilling to scrap that and mix things together now. It doesn't feel fair or right, but my husband thinks it's a jerk move not to give the kids the same thing. It's never been a problem when my stepson has had extras due to having another parent and household also contributing to his clothing, his car, his spending money, etc. But now, suddenly we have to be even. And just to be clear, being even actually means giving my stepson even more of the money due to the fact that my daughter's scholarships are more comprehensive. The kids are close, and I'm sure my stepson will realize there's a difference in university money. But if my husband wanted to change things, I feel like this should have been brought up sooner than this. Am I the jerk? ATA since it's been asked. My late husband was quite young when he passed, so there was nothing much to speak of in the way of an inheritance or life insurance. And yes, to reiterate, my husband and I did discuss this prior to marriage and agreed to keep the kids' expenses as part of our separate accounts and finances. Not the jerk. Aside from the fact he only wants to combine now because you have more money than him, Why can't/isn't his son's other parent contributing? Sucks for the son, but this is literally what his dad wanted and you obliged. OP, I don't know what his mother will be contributing, but I can't imagine it won't be much. She might surprise us all, but she's more of a spend now person rather than save for later. I just want to say, please do not do anything to split the money now. A, your daughter earned her scholarships. The fact that there will be excess money is due to her hard work. B, it sounds like she did without a lot, from not having a living second parent to not getting as much spending money and luxuries as a young teen. Don't penalize her for that now by taking what your sacrifices accumulated to. C, do not teach her that she has to sacrifice herself and her security to maintain a relationship with a man, her brother and father figure, or that her security and comfort shouldn't be her #1 priority. And D, college is a tough transition for a lot of kids. She could lose those scholarships if she falters her first semester or if she figures out this isn't the right school for her. Taking from her funds now puts additional pressure on her to never have a misstep or change in heart, major, or school because her financial security is at stake. This is a hill to die on. I don't usually recommend to stop communicating in a marriage, but this subject matter is closed. Agree with this 100%. You can't predict the future. Scholarships can be lost because of external things, not even just daughter not getting expected grades or changing schools. Funding can fall through. Some scholarships are only for first year and not future years. Don't give away her money because stepfather and ex-wife didn't plan accordingly. OP, look at it this way. It was convenient for your husband, whose son also had the support of a present mother. He did this knowing that it would separate your daughter from having any access to whatever your stepson received. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, he's had a change of mind. Not the jerk, OP. Your husband seems to be someone who cares more about his own personal convenience than being an actual partner in your marriage. This is his bed he made. He gets to lie in it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know.
Now, I ain't saying he's a gold digger.
Am I the jerk for kicking out my brother's girlfriend for how she behaved? Mike, 36 male, has been dating Tara, 32 female, for about a year. At this point, she should be a huge part of every holiday gathering, but I've heard complaints from Mike about how everyone in the family treats Tara like a stranger and doesn't want her in their homes. When I talked to people about it, they told me they aren't going to talk about it. It's a choice they have made. I can make my own choices about Tara and Mike, but they don't want her in their home at all. My sister, Claire, who's 28, sounded exhausted when I asked. I, 26 female, just moved back home in November and have not met Tara in person. I'm renting a townhouse with my husband, Greg, who's 30. Mike and Tara were out of town visiting her family most of November and December. Mike has my address. I've gotten 3 ring videos of Tara knocking on my door at weird times during the day. When I don't answer, she waited there a few times for up to 10 minutes. She texted me the last time about how I wasn't home, and I said we aren't home during the day, and if we are, then she needs to text us instead of just coming by. Greg said she seems a little intrusive, but he has sisters like that, so we just tried to look past it. On the 23rd, Mike and Tara texted me to say that they were in the area. Could they stop by? I said sure, we're having grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. Did they want a plate? Mike said absolutely. When Tara sees what we are having, she goes,
"Oh, I don't want that. I will just make myself something else."
I tell Mike we don't have anything else she can eat right now. Everything else is for another meal. Mike tells her to just eat what we have, and she plops down like a toddler. She then says she needs to use the bathroom. We show her the guest bathroom. She says there's no bathtub in there. Mike asks if she can use our main bathroom to take a shower. I tell him no. He gets upset. At this point, Greg and I are starting to get why Tara isn't welcome in people's homes. I'm about to make an excuse for them to leave when Tara comes out with my box of mud masks, which had been sitting on my bed. It was unopened. She tells me she loves this brand and she wants to use one right now. I tell her no. Greg takes the box out of her hand and says it might be time for them to leave, as we have somewhere we need to be. Mike and Tara leave. Later, I get a text from Mike asking what I thought of Tara. I told him politely I would love to see more of him if he wants to come by, but I don't think Tara and I would get on. He called me a jerk and told me to grow up. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Tara's home planet apparently never discovered the concept of boundaries. Not the jerk. If there's something mentally wrong with Tara outside of just being a blatant self-centered jerk, it's on Mike to warn people before bringing her over. At this point, even if it's just her being a self-centered jerk, Mike should warn people about how she acts before bringing her into their home. At this point, he knows that she will cause problems and he chooses to enable her. Not the jerk. Does she have a disability? I mean, how does asking to use the bathroom translate into I want to take a bath? I mean, even when I visit my parents, I don't go into their room. Seriously, boundaries. And to demand to use your products? Oh no. I'm glad they left. And he wants you to grow up? I would send a text with everything she did that was not appropriate and tell them you will grow up when she does. Am I the jerk for stopping sending my ex money because I'm getting married? So I, 29 female, I was born into a family who had a lot of money. I had the newest and most expensive things growing up, went to private school, had cars, expensive jewelry, and houses given to me as birthday and graduation gifts. I'm grateful that my parents didn't raise me to think lower of people because of money and stuff. So anyway, this incident involves me, my ex, 28 male, my current boyfriend, 25 male, my boyfriend's sister, 30 female, and my ex's boyfriend, 25 male. Me and my ex were together for a few years, and I ended up getting pregnant. I had the baby, but didn't really want it, and I broke up with him and let him have her full time. I sent over money to take care of them, but I didn't want to be involved. I've been dating my now boyfriend for almost 4 years, and I'm pregnant. This time I'm ready for a kid. We've been looking at rings and have been discussing him proposing, etc. I am close to my due date now, and I decided since I want my dream wedding, plus I want to get nice things for my kid and for myself, as a reward for going through these 9 months, that I would stop sending money to my ex for a while. I didn't want to want something for my wedding or my kid or me and not be able to get it. I stopped the payment and was talking about it to my boyfriend. He said that it was my money, so I get to decide what I do with it, but said that I have so much he couldn't possibly see how I could spend so much and run out. Well, his sister was over, and she told me that it was not okay at all. She told my boyfriend that it was a huge red flag that I would stop supporting my kid that I already have, so I could have my dream wedding. I told her not to talk about my relationship. Well, she knows my ex through me, but turns out she actually knows his boyfriend personally, and she decided to text him and warn him that I'm not going to be sending any more money without even asking me. I called her rude and selfish and told her to get out of my house. My boyfriend tried to calm things down, but I said he should have my side, and if he's going to go against me, he can also leave. He shut up and his sister left. I got a message from my ex's boyfriend saying that I should have told them, that I'm lucky that they didn't rely on that money to feed her and that they could support her on their own income. He said that my reasoning is messed up and I should have at least given them a heads up. I told him that he is not my kid's dad and should stop acting like one. I said that it feels like all he cares about is the money. I was upset and insinuated that he is only with X for my money. I didn't really mean it, I was just emotional. I've blocked him and my boyfriend's sister. I'm now super upset and stressed and worried about how this might affect my baby. Now, while I don't think I'm the jerk, but there are a few people who are mad at me. My boyfriend almost took his sister's side, and I'm just a hormonal mess right now, so I'm not 100% sure I'm being unbiased. So, am I the jerk? You're the jerk. How are you rich and a deadbeat? Take care of your kids. Weddings aren't an excuse to neglect your kids. Not only that, but she wasn't even going to tell her first child's father that she was going to stop sending money. But she thinks the stress of being a jerk and being called out for it might damage the baby she's about to deliver. You're the jerk big time. You create a kid, you support that kid until it can support itself, and you certainly don't cut off support with no warning. You're also entitled and selfish. After her rude response, I hope her ex and his boyfriend take her to the cleaners for child support. It seems like they were not intending to pursue it and just wanted her to understand that what she did was wrong. But after her little tantrum, I wouldn't be surprised if they were no longer interested in playing nice. I'd do it on principle. It's not their money, it's for their kid. Without some amazing reason like life-saving surgery being discussed beforehand, I'd take her to the cleaners too. You're the jerk. On what planet would deciding to stop paying your child support so you could have a huge lavish wedding not make you a jerk? Especially since you're apparently so loaded, you could do all that without ditching your responsibilities to your firstborn. Not to mention the weird comments about telling a man who has had way more of a hand in raising your kid than you have that he's not the parent. He's more of a parent than you've ever been. The man who has no idea what to get his wife. Many years ago, I worked in an old-fashioned department store, going from department to department depending where I needed help, if any. It was Christmas Eve, and I was on the jewelry counter. It was about 20 minutes until we closed, and this man comes jogging up to my counter, looking like he was being chased by something. When he reached the counter, he placed his hands onto it and tried to catch his breath. I was just about to ask him if he was alright when he manages to gasp out, "Present! Wife! Forgot!" So I went, "Oh dear, okay, do you have something in mind?" "No, I have no idea at all," he says, giving me a look, as if because I'm a female, I should know what his wife would want. I'm thinking to myself, great, one of those. What, do they think I can read minds? Out loud, I said, "Okay, does she wear gold or silver?" He gives me this really confused look before answering, Gold, I think." I'm already thinking, this is going to take forever. Does she like to wear rings? Only her wedding and engagement ring. Earrings? I don't think she has pierced ears, he mumbled thoughtfully. So, what about a necklace or a bracelet? His eyes light up at this suggestion. Yeah, one of those would be good. Do you know her birthstone? I asked hopefully. He shot me a confused look. What's a birthstone? I sighed mentally and thought, great, so now I have to explain this too. It's the gemstone assigned to your month of birth. If you tell me what month your wife was born, I can tell you what her stone is. Oh, that sounds great. Her birthday is in September. She's a sapphire then. I removed a gold bracelet with sapphires set in it from the case and placed it on the counter before him. This is classic bracelet. It has all its hallmarks and comes in the box. He hardly looked at it. Great, I'll take it. Do you do wrapping? No, not here. But if you ask the perfumery, they might be able to help you. But you'll need to make it quick. We close soon. He paid, grabbed the box, and dashed away towards perfumery. Our story, however, does not end here. A few days after Christmas, the man returned to the store with his wife. They came over to the counter, and the lady asked her husband, "Is this her?" He smiled and said, "Yup." She turned to me and smiled, showed me the bracelet, and said, "Thank you so much for helping my husband find me such a wonderful gift. I love it." And he said you were so helpful and kind to him that I just had to say thank you. To this day, that story makes me both laugh from the frazzled state of the husband and feel happy inside from knowing that the customer was so happy with their gift. Am I the jerk for canceling a playdate because of my son's attitude? This seems ridiculous, but I feel awful. I am a 28-year-old mom to my only kid, Zach, who's 7. This year has been pretty crazy in his social life, and he has friends over constantly. This doesn't bother me too much, but it has been a heck of a time managing Zach's attitude. Before, he was a helpful kid who really didn't get in much trouble. He would pick up his toys, keep his room tidy, and help me with chores. Nothing crazy. He would help me load the dishwasher, help me with the laundry, and sweep. I expected things to change a bit as he got older, but not this much. Now he constantly fights me on everything. For months, I would remind him to pick up and help with chores. This results in him fighting, saying it's not his job and he's not my maid. I always tell him it's his toys, his room, and his responsibility. Now, I do help. He picks up his room, I vacuum. He cleans up his toys, I help organize. I don't expect perfection. On to the issue. He was invited to his friend's house with my mother today. Him and Allie, who's 6, were going to play with her new Xbox for a few hours while my mom visited with her mom. No problem. He goes with my mom a few times a month. However, today I told him to pick up his toys in the living room and dining room. I couldn't walk through the house without tripping over something. I admit I was aggravated, and I did yell that I just cleaned the house last night, and this was ridiculous. I had been in the craft room most of the morning finishing up an order. He fought me, but we got the toys picked up. I then went to the bathroom by his room, and his room was trashed. You couldn't even see the floor. I called him in and told him it was unacceptable and to clean it. He started yelling. He threw toys at me and yelled that he's not my maid, that it's his room and I can't tell him what to do with it. I was angry and I told him he wasn't going to Allie's house today. This ended in screaming and tears. I held firm. My mom called me, telling me she would be on her way to get Zach soon. I told her sorry, but Zach was grounded for the day, and I explained what happened. She yelled at me, saying he's 7 and shouldn't be expected to clean or miss time with his friends. We got into an argument, and I hung up on her. Now her friend is texting me, saying she doesn't know if she wants her daughter around me, and she doesn't want Zach over anymore until I apologize to my mom and to Zach. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. My question is, where did he learn to use the "I'm not your maid" line? A kid who has generally been helpful with things like this doesn't just suddenly stop and start spouting crap like that. Find the adult or the kid who is rubbing off on him and put an end to it. Grandma and her friend, on the other hand, need to be told in no uncertain terms to butt out. Period. Your kid is not theirs, and you will be the one making the behavioral expectations known to him and handing out the punishments you see fit for not meeting those expectations. ETA, on the off chance he got the whole not your maid thing from something he watches online or TV or wherever, sit him down and explain to him why this is offensive and that by saying this, he's basically calling you his maid. Actually, shut him down and explain it anyway. He's 7 and should not be saying crap like that to anyone, period. Not the jerk. You did the right thing. 7 is old enough to know what is right and what is wrong. He didn't clean his room, copped an attitude about it, and you didn't reward that behavior. Please stand firm against your mom and Allie's mom. They can do what they like, but you are raising your son right. His future husband or wife will appreciate your efforts. You got this, mama. Well, who do you think is a jerk? OP or grandma and her friend? Please let us know.
If I had ever spoken like that to my parents, I probably wouldn't be alive right now.
Me neither, Karen. Me neither. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay back a friend after they helped me out? 3 months ago, I, 21 female, was out running errands and I accidentally
slammed my finger in the car door.
It didn't break anything, but I was wearing acrylics and about 3 of them were ripped off and I needed a band-aid badly. My friend lived about 3 minutes away from where I was, so I called her and asked if I could come over for some help. She agreed and I raced over to her place as fast as I could. I parked close to her apartment and didn't even think about the parking situation. When my friend opened the door, she ushered me in and it took about 10 minutes to get me cleaned up. Her roommate also came out to help and we talked for 10 more minutes before I left. When I got to my car, I saw it had been booted. I called my friend and she said, "Oh crap, I totally forgot about parking," and her roommate came out to help me. I called the company and they informed me that it would cost $150 to take the boot off. I was completely distraught because I had no money left after grocery shopping and I wasn't going to get paid for another week. My friend's roommate then offered to pay for the boot and said I could pay her back for it. I was grateful at the time and I really appreciated it, but after everything was said and done, I thought that I was put in an unfair situation. Neither my friend or her roommate informed me at all about the parking the 20 minutes I was there, and I wasn't aware that parking was permitted because I had never stayed over before. The roommate didn't start hitting me up for the money until the beginning of the holidays, and I really didn't have it. She didn't demand it, but did ask every week, and it became extremely stressful for me. I talked to my boyfriend about this situation, and we agreed on a possible solution where I would pay her back for half, but the other half should be on them since they were the ones who didn't inform me about the parking situation. I mentioned this to my friend and her roommate, and they freaked out on me. The roommate even told me she would take me to small claims court if I didn't pay the full amount. I don't think what I asked for was unreasonable, and everyone in my life, boyfriend, parents, mutual friends, agree that this is a good solution. Am I the jerk? Edit. Roommate was her friend/acquaintance. We had hung out a few times with my other friend, but I didn't know her as well as my friend who I called. Edit. It wasn't no parking. It was regular parking that required a permit. Yes, there was signage, but I didn't see it because I was just looking at her apartment. I didn't have multiple violations that led to me being booted. It was a private parking and it was a college town, so they will boot or tow at first violation. Edit. I Venmo'd her the $150. You're the jerk. It's not their job to ensure you park your car properly. It's your car, and if you've never stayed over, then you should have asked if it would be okay to leave it there. I understand you were in a bit of distress, but I find it rather crappy that your friend's roommate fronted the money for you, and not only are you making them chase for it, you're now thinking of not paying them back in full. I'd be so embarrassed if I was OP's friend. The experience alone would make me reevaluate our friendship, and I'd probably stop talking to her. No, but literally imagine helping your roommate's friend because you saw they were clearly in distress and being kind enough to remind, not demand the money even after weeks, then getting blamed for not informing them of parking rules with visible signage. You're the jerk for going back on your word and changing your mind about paying back a debt. This is exactly it. It isn't about them warning about the parking, but an agreement for someone to front the money with the understanding the money would be paid back was made. You don't backtrack after accepting the money. You're the jerk. It's your car, your responsibility. Pay them back the full amount. They may even be willing to take smaller payments if you can't afford the full $150 at once. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the roommate that was trying to help her out? Please let us know.
Might want to put up some no Karen signage in that parking lot as well. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.